So let's kick things off and tell everyone that J2v takes place on July the 11th and 12th. There'll be 4 stages, films, panel discussions, and a lineup which you are curating. So honestly, the first and most simple question to start with is, can you explain the process behind the curation?
Yeah, I needed to show how we represent my brothers and sisters in Detroit, and you know, make sure that people remember that Detroit is where this shit started and it went down. And for glory, hallelujah, this is the way it is. Oh, my peoples, oh yeah. I'm trying to get my Little Richard on, so
yeah, I got you.
A question that I guess I have, just so we're clear, is it exclusively Detroit artists or mostly Detroit artists?
No, it's all Detroit guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
That I take it is pretty important as the point then.
Yeah, definitely. The you know, the reality that everyone's at home and that we could do it, we should do it, and we did do it, and that's what we did. Unfortunately, some people who are from Detroit but couldn't come, like Mr. Troxler up there.
I escaped, man. I was a quick thing happened. I was meant to come, but then I was able to get back home to Ibiza. So I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if we were doing it in Kalamazoo, you would have came, motherfucker.
Even less of a chance, to be fair. but no. So actually, was really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, sorry we didn't have you.
The journalist in me is going to have to backpedal slightly and say, can you please tell us some of the names of the people that you are bringing, please?
Okay. And we're not recording now. This is just a dry run, right?
We are recording.
Oh, we are?
We are.
All that shit you were doing, the glory holla stupid.
Hey, I was told it was supposed to be at 2. All right.
There is a reason we're all here right now.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, we had Jessica Care Moore, which is really important to have. She's a local poet. She's incredible, a political poet. We needed to have some of that outside of the music because, of course, we have the music, which we had Kevin Saunderson and Diaz Saunderson, DJ Holographic, DJ Minx, K Hand, DJ Dez, Wajid, someone like Al Esther, who's just an amazing DJ that never gets out of Detroit. Very rarely gets out of Detroit, so we tried to represent that as well. We had Stacy Pullen. We had my mentor Derrick May. We had some great people that are on this lineup.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about Jessica Moore? You mentioned, so she's a poet, an artist, and an activist. She's quite a new name to people watching this. How did you come across Jessica?
She has been doing some work with Jeff Mills over the last couple of years, and I think how I came across her was on Jeff Mills' radio show that he does. I don't know. I think it's monthly or bi-monthly or something of that sort. So when I heard what she was doing there, but then I met her at Dream Hampton's house, and she's really a sweet woman, and turns out very talented. She was in New York for Marcus Belgrave tribute. She's been making her bones not only around Detroit, but she did something with Dave Chappelle recently at Dave Chappelle's Compound, with Talib Kweli, I think with Common, I believe. I'm not so certain about the Common thing, but you know, she's around and prominent in this scene, you know. So it's really my honor to have had her as part of this project.
Okay, great. Now, for people who are sort of watching this, we've had a WhatsApp group, which we've kind of, we've all had a little say in there. We don't necessarily need to go in too deep into every part of that, but maybe a good place to start could be the chat that I mentioned, which was about the Awakenings lineup. Now, lots of people jumped in and said, this is a whitewash, and I think everyone will have their own opinion on that. Carl, for example, I don't think you'll mind me pointing out that you said Loca Dice is black. That seemed to go kind of unnoticed to a degree, but I guess the bigger point was when it comes to...
We didn't know that. You know, everybody, at least most people here, knew that he was his like parents are, I think, Tunisian or something like that.
Yes, that's right.
So I mean, you know, it's not like, all right, we forgot Loca Dice was black. We didn't have to.
No, I just think it was interesting that the bigger picture is, it was, you know, as with all of the streams, it was primarily white techno artists. That's really the bigger point. And right now, to be doing that in the world that we're in is, you know, something that what you're doing right now, Carl, is, you know, shining a light on artists who just aren't getting the looks that they deserve and perhaps need.
Even in Holland, you got people like Steve Rockman,
exactly,
Betty Rodriguez. You know, it's not like a lack of talent or artists.
Orlando Vroon.
Yeah, Orlando's over there.
Yeah.
A lot of people live actually in Amsterdam. So, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I guess it's like now's the time where I think a lot of people or a lot of promoters, in the same way it happened when with the women's movement and women like kind of holding their hand up and then everyone being like, okay, I think this is going to be very much the same moment for black artists, you know, because it's not like the talent base isn't there. It's just I think a lot of this scene is based around people that know each other and kind of handshakes, you know, and that type of thing, and not really looking at the greater picture of what to remember. A lot of artist agencies and as well as promoters, you know, not promoters, but managers really push for a lot of these artists to get on the lineups as well as where they're kind of headlined or their names fit on the lineups, you know. So
now everyone on this chat knows their music inside out, and not just house and techno. Everyone knows their music inside out, which is why I love these chats. Now, I wanted to throw in the suggestion or the thought that if you look at house and techno the way that the rock and roll industry as festivals has been for the last sort of 40, 50 years, you've got certain acts in rock music, like, say, the Stones, Aerosmith, who have remained there and remained at the top for decades. Is that something that is to a degree happening in the electronic music, where the people who made it to the very top are staying there the way that if you had a rock festival or Reading or Leeds, you would almost certainly, if you could, book one of those rock acts that have been around for 30, 40 years? Or is that just one small aspect? Carl, let me ask you that. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Like, is it about people's positions not really moving so much and people not wanting to let other talent in? Is that one thing that strikes you as one element here?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, with the Stones, with Clapton, with all those guys, I mean, they might have had maybe greater fame than Juan Atkins or Derrick May or Kevin Saunderson. So they're seen as kind of this cornerstone of, you know, of 60s, 70s rock and stuff. Big hits they all had, where with techno music, I don't think anybody's had that kind of success, you know, and electronic music, period. I don't think anybody's had nearly that kind of success. Maybe the Prodigy or Chemical Brothers or something. But again, we're talking about music that's Black music that's dominated by white artists, you know.
Yeah.
So rock music was as race music, or as you know, blues music, way before those guys got their hands on it. And the same thing with techno, where, you know, the respect factor is there, but unfortunately the hits and then that thing that you can attach it to isn't there. So somebody has said something that was real funny. He said, yeah, I was hanging out with this young girl at a party somewhere, and she said, yeah, techno is, and I can't remember who the heck it was. And the guy was like, God damn, you know, you're just like, you just don't know anything. Let me teach you, you know, which is great, but it's like what people see in front of them gives them the idea of what they think something is. So if people see Eminem as being rap, then that's what they're gonna see, as that's always gonna be their concept of what rap music is. And they don't know shit about Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and, you know, Run DMC and all those kind of guys. So it unfortunately changes due to, you know, the perception of the people at the time, or the generation, or any of that stuff.
Seth, do you kind of understand what I'm saying about, like?
I completely understand in the sense that you're talking about like heritage techno acts like headlining the same festivals that they always do. In many sense,
Yeah.
like a Time Warp, Awakenings, or Ibiza clubs, or like any or most festivals in the world. I mean,
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, is that one small part of it?
Oh, I mean, definitely, I can say as someone who's even a part of that system, you know, in many ways, you know, like being part of the Time Warp thing, or being part of other things where you're kind of at some point there's like a headliner plateau or whatever, and then you get stuck in this kind of zone where basically it's like the same group of people always headline or do the same festivals, and I don't think that's right. It's very like seldom that our scene is creating new stars, and I think that's detrimental to the whole electronic music scene as a whole. And it's like, it's really like comes down to who wants to play that Game of Thrones game, you know. Like I personally am kind of over it, but it's like, it's very stupid. I like how that whole situation works with both like managers and promoters, and how like really the pressures that are put on some people to repeat this kind of business. And a lot of it is like, I think just a lot of old relationships. You know, if you've been playing for someone for 25 years, then you can't fault them to continue to book you. However, I do feel that like in terms of some of these larger festivals, that there should be a greater and there has always should have been a greater representation of like American Black and house acts who actually all these artists are all these artists records are being played, but then they're not being represented being formally booked at the festivals. So it's like a kind of mix of like, okay, when you're playing our music but then not putting on our artists, that's where the kind of gap is, you know, and that's what's wrong.
Ariel, you made a really good point, which is about you wanted to talk about the audiences and how ultimately, if you are, you know, someone who lives in the UK and spends a lot of time in Europe, obviously those audiences are primarily white audiences, but ultimately it's a question of hopefully the new kids coming through not just being, as it always has been, just young white men or boys. You know, you want more female talent to come through. You want more female representation in the audience. But you also want it to be, you know, one of the things that I loved about Ibiza 20 years ago was not feeling like I was in the UK. I loved looking around space or whatever and thinking, I don't just feel like I'm the only, I actually felt like being white was an unusual thing in certain places because it was Spanish and Italian and French and and I found that refreshing. But actually the bigger point for you is you want the audiences to change, don't you?
I mean, I think behind the decks in front of me, I would like that to change because when I see out to the crowd, depending on what city I am, not just in the UK and Europe, but also in America, I'll see more white females on the dance floor and just about it, and they're all like maybe 19 or 20, maybe just pushing 21. And if you can change the concept of the crowd in front of you being, you know, more culture being like African American descent, maybe more Hispanics, maybe a little bit of older people. Like I would love people that are past like my age, like if they're 50 on the dance floor, I would really appreciate seeing that generational gap ending too, because you're also having people in the industry and DJ culture that people are actually in their 50s and 40s still DJing, and why can't we get that on the dance floors too? Because then we can have more of a conversation of us as all, you know, one people. I just don't want to go to a club and I'm hanging out with 19-year-old white girls that are just starting to come of age. No offense, it's just that moment of I need the culture to combine, because my music combines, is not just one types of people.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, and Paulette, you know, DJ Paulette brought up the fact that, you know, she was mentioning it to some people like, oh, why don't you ever want to come to this event or to this festival or anything? It's like, because they don't put anyone on for me. Like if they had people I wanted to come and see, I would come and see them. So that ends up being a big part of it too, with these festival organizers and with these people who are booking these talents. They always go that this is our audience. Well, this is your audience primarily, I feel, because of who you're putting up there to play for them. If you want to attract other people or attract a different audience or attract even more inclusive or more, I don't want to say well-rounded, but I mean in terms of pulling from different demographic groups and different sort of classifications and things, then put people up there that want to see that, you know, that would draw those people in. If you want to get some more like middle-aged Korean women, then you would put someone on the bill that they would want to come and see. It's a typically follow that for like these people that hide behind a sense of, but this is our thing, you know. But change the thing. That's how you fix that. You just change the thing. It's not even that hard.
No, 100%. It's about representation, and it's like you don't get people to come to parties who don't feel represented. It's like if you're at a thing and you're, I mean, I don't know, let's say this, what are they calling it, organic house or shaman? Like I don't know, this whole thing. It's like I saw that as like a joke the other day, but I guess they turned into a real thing. But that's kind of like beatport, neo shaman. I don't know, this like Tulum bullshit. But if you like only playing music like that, then you're obviously going to only draw a certain crowd. If you're only playing music like Dixon, then a lot of other people are going to be like, I mean, he's a good friend of mine, but that's like a lot of people aren't going to be drawn towards that sound or music. It's like only certain demographics of people. So if you don't see black people or women or people of different ages DJing in front of you, then your entry level is that only of kind of that other genre or other style of music, then obviously you're only going to feel that that's the whole music that represents that entire community, but you won't feel as because like I mean if you want to go dance with some older people, go to Derrick's party, Queen in Chicago. Ain't nobody in there like 21.
I mean there's a couple, but they're like, you know, they end up being like somebody's son or some shit. No, they just can't. My son, like all right. But yeah, it is like that. It's really like that. If you have people that other people, I mean,
if we have more black DJs, more black kids are going to want to go DJ.
Yeah, and want to become DJs too. Because when I started seeing more people that look like me, I was like, oh, I can do that too.
Exactly.
It just made it so much easier to go through that process of being told, no, you can't do that because you're this kind of culture, you're black or you're female.
I mean, I was very lucky coming from Detroit as a kid to have guys like Carl, Derrick around, you know. Like got obsessed with these guys when I was a kid, you know. Talked to both of you about it. But those kind of me seeing those people on stage around me is what made me believe that this was like a real thing that I could do, you know. Probably this same with you, Ariel, in Detroit, you know. So it's like I think what we're talking about, and also when we talked about with the movement, is just people being more proactive and aware. And us coming up, I think, with almost like an action statement of things that we think are able to change in the very near future. There's this thing that I was been recently hooked up with. It's called the Black musician artist coalition. It's like this thing that started with this girl. There's like this whole thing kind of brewing, and actually they put out this big kind of mission statement in Billboard, and I had reached out to them through William Morrison, was like, hey, this is really cool. We're talking about Black people and EDM culture, and there's many talks I was saying I've been having with Carl and some other people, and I was like, well, we really need to actually, Carl, we got to talk offline. I want to put you in touch with them because they really need some guidance on like a lot of the issues and things that you're talking about are from one perspective, but you don't really understand the perspective of all these Black artists who've been in this culture and invented this culture for a long time, and the things that they are trying to address, the systematic nature of how this culture has kind of changed from being predominantly Black, LGBTQ, Latino, people of color, and has switched to a predominantly white facing system, right? Where like basically at one point there's been a replication of the music, and then all the stars of the Black stars kind of pushed out and then replaced with people who kind of replicate or play or make facsimiles of what is Black music, but to like a much higher degree of success. I think that's what we're all talking about, right? At some point. But it's like, it's either like some people like Derrick had stepped out of the game a long time ago and was like, I just don't feel like playing. I'm just going to play where I want to play, which is like the highest of respects, I feel.
Yeah.
He's like,
tired of that shit. You really something that, I only have so many hours in the day, in those hours, trying to like get my head around why people don't want to put me in. I played that shit last year and slammed it, but now this year I get no calls back or these sorts of things. It's that like there's maybe 15 festival slots for Black people the whole summer. So, they cycle through them. You get a Honey, you get a Seth, you get a Carl, you get like, this other sort of trickle down. Like we need like 4 this tier, 3 from this tier, and then maybe a couple up and comers just so, their mother used to help me out. Whatever, this hand wash shit.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just a lot. Like whatever. I don't need extra. I can have a good ass life, but also I still want to be able to present and show people, even so that you can still be authentic and figure out a way to represent yourself. So in that, like having more visibility and more representation and more senses of like, possibility that when kids' eyes get open, when they kind of see things, then it opens up a whole bunch of avenues for them in terms of just how their lives can progress and how their dreams can be fulfilled. And that's ideally a huge part of what these festivals are selling anyway. They're selling fantasy. They're selling dreams. They're selling like this, pseudo utopia idea during the summertime and the sunshine and everybody's happy and all together. What life's about. But like, we have this marvelous, wonderful life we're selling, but we don't want no Black people there. That's kind of what it.
So you don't feel like Black people love those moments too.
Yeah.
But it also reminds me of this thing. I was looking at Jesus and Mero when they were talking about how in the Flintstones there was no Black people, and in the there was no Black people. So why is it that from prehistoric times to way in the future, there's been no Black people in any of these scenarios? So we just get wiped out from that all the way through. And so in no kind of like idealized or representational sense are there inclusion where like a kid who was that kid like me would say, oh, that looks cool. I think I might want to do that. Like,
and at some point, dance music and Black music was our utopian version of our, and then that was kind of changed and taken away as well.
The barbecue was the hot joint. That was the hot joint. I used to DJ the cookouts. That's where I got my first DJ gig, and that's how I learned to get it. But that was like, people who look like me, and I was like, oh, I know precisely how picky they are, exactly how they are not going to give it up unless you make them give it up, and I'm gonna give it up. And then I was like, oh, if I got Uncle Jesse out there doing the sugar dip and the mashed potato, bitch, no. these kids ain't ready. So yeah.
I mean, I was really fortunate. I mean, Derrick and I, one of my last European gig before the pandemic was with Derrick at Blitz Club in Munich.
Yeah, I had fun.
Wow, Derrick. I mean, and I also got to see you play in DC earlier, a couple weeks or a month earlier prior to that. And seeing Derrick play, and also seeing Derrick May play last year, was like a revelation as a DJ. I was just like, fuck, and I was just like, it's just crazy to me that a talent so high, and like also one of the, I mean, speaking to everyone here, like the greatest talents of our time, are like kind of somewhat looked over in this context of people who aren't even, I think, that talented, and they're just like whatever, they're fucking managers or resident advisor or whatever. They get all the boop, let's plug them in, and it's like they're not really adding stuff to the conversation, and they're not really showing what house music or techno music is really meant to be, which I think should be the biggest part of the conversation right now. Why we still have these people in the room. We still have the ability to hear the originators of fucking techno and dance of house music, the people who invented the fucking thing, right? They are there at home, and then you got kids who are like in their early 20s trying to be like these people, playing these people's records and getting like booked all the time, which is like
Daddy put an ad on the side of a box truck to drive around Ibiza so they could get gigs. I mean, these sorts of things still blow my mind. Like, really? That's how? All right, cool. I mean, then it makes me think, shit, I got decent credit. I could get a box truck and put my
it's the moving from art to entertainment, right? And
it's the wrong kind of message, I think, wholly, because it says nothing about their talent. It just says something about their ability to ease their way in, or to sort of shoehorn their way into a position that, those opportunities aren't available to everyone. Not everyone daddy can get them a truck. Not everyone's whatever manager is so-and-so and so who knows so-and-so and so. And then you just get this middle of the road sort of level of experience and also imagination. Like, I don't find these people have much imagination. I know all the people in this panel, and then especially all the people that I frequently or associate with, have crazy imagination, musical imagination, lyrical imagination, artistic imagination, not top 40. These are the hits that I need to make sure I get in so that I'm booked next week imagination, because that's not imagination.
Well, what it sounds like you're saying is the same thing that happened to Little Richard when Pat Boone would redo his song. That
like white people are the cover of the Isley Brothers album.
Right. The early Motown records started out with not the faces of the artists on them, because it was said that they couldn't sell the records if they did, and the middle of the road aspect of it. I mean, there are a lot of people putting out a lot of hot tracks. There are maybe too many people putting out sort of hot tracks.
No, A&R men were at least at some point, I think, like a kind of gatekeeper to a certain level of things. Like, you had to have 3 or 4 people that, okay, yeah, and then go through the process. Now I got a label, I can just upload it to Beatport, and that's democracy in action and lovely, but there's no process, there's no finishing school, there's nothing and being able to. And if anyone can just be able to, then why not us? Why can't we just be able to? Where's our able to? So,
well, the finishing school before was like in Detroit, the finishing school was Music Institute. And I'm sure for you guys, the finishing school was the Warehouse or the Music Box, or, and
like, I know you played the closing of Shelter.
Did I?
Yeah. I was supposed to play, but I couldn't make it back home. They're like, that's all right, we got Kyle Craig. I'm like, oh.
Okay. But those were the finishing schools. So, you look at Atlanta and their thing, what is it? Organized Confusion or something. That's kind of like their finishing school for trap music down there. Right. If you wanna get into it, you want to do the music, then then you go to see those guys. And in Sweden, it seems like for pop music that goes on into EDM music, I read some type of article on the airplane, and they've got something where they manufacture, they're manufacturing a lot of those artists, but
ever the dudes, yeah.
Huh?
I said it's like Max someone and
somebody like that.
My finishing school was in Europe because I left so early. So
right. But you chose in that situation and you searched it out. But I think that there are a lot of people who definitely get put on and they're not ready to get put on. And it's not the same as what it was before, where you just go by the seat of your pants. It's like they put you on, you become like this kind of it person for the time being, and then you just kind of disappear because you don't have the talent. You don't have that thing that finishes off that talent for you to keep on, to keep on the scene.
Also, the time it takes to be a really good DJ or a really good artist. It takes a lot of time, like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years.
Right.
I mean,
like
I'm
20
years in the game so far.
I'm still learning, bro.
every day.
But do we now live in a time where the importance of the history of electronic music is less important than, say, what an artist has done? If you had a Beatport #1 versus if you've got a 25-year career.
I think we are in that time.
Yeah.
What do you say, Derrick? Sorry.
I said if people start thinking history isn't important, then that's the kind of shit that causes what's happening.
That's how we got Donald Trump.
Not knowing the history at all.
Yeah, but it is true that, sorry, Derrick, but it is true that I mean, we've gotten to a time where it just seems like what you do now is important. What you did then isn't important. So, what did Derrick May always tell me? You're never as good as your next hit. So it's like you can be a has-been so easily in the music business from way before, but there was still like that respect, that historical respect that happened where, there was something that was being said that made you go out and look for these guys. You hear about Frankie Knuckles, you hear about, Derrick May, you hear about Larry Levan, you hear about all these guys. It's important that we know those history, but it just seems so far-fetched that there are people that are coming in that are just dipping their foot in the pool and they don't give a fuck about nothing else, only about what they're experiencing right at that time, and then when they get bored of it, they're out, and then they go back to listening to whatever rock and roll in many cases.
I think also that there's like a new generation, maybe closer to RL's age and kind of like Gen, what is it, Y or Z, or I don't know what you guys are. X.
I don't know. I'm just living here. I'm just living. I'm like 30 is my age. I'm not.
Oh, you're 30. Okay, so we're actually close to the same age. I thought you were a bit younger. You got better skin than me.
Oh no, you got the good skin. It's okay.
Yeah. No, but like the really younger generation, that say that, I don't know, whatever they're called. They are really on this path of like living their own lives and not looking at all about the past towards anything, not just music. It's like we're here, we're now, we want to forge our own way, and we don't really care about what's happened before. And I think that's kind of going over to music, to everything else. With like, I know when I was coming up, and RL was probably coming up too, especially in Detroit, you had to know about everything that happened already, or else you couldn't even be in a conversation or in the room with people. It was so part of even just to be able to have a conversation, you had to be like, so, and then people would be like, what, wait, that was,
You have to know the history, but because you'd be checked a lot consistently. And it's good that you have like peers that want to check you, but also me growing up, so I'm 30, and I know for me, it was a lot of actual gatekeepers consistently, but there were actually at this time like a more white gatekeepers consistently in like Ann Arbor area, which I had to prove myself in different ways as being a female, but also knowing like, oh no, what, I'm a Detroiter, I know what I got, I know what I can do, my skill. And this generation also, for me personally, we don't want to waste our time consistently having to prove ourselves of the history we know. We just want to show you, like, here's all the work I've done of learning my history.
I think about that, like it's like a very fundamentally Detroit school of thought, like how what you're just speaking about.
Okay.
Chicago as well. You know, it's like a way of that before it was kind of brought up in art. But when you go to Europe or maybe a lot of other countries that where electronic music has booming scenes, these same dialogues aren't as important in the conversation. You know, and then that's why it's so important right now that we readdress the cultural heritage of house and techno music. So then as techno and electronic music glows into this huge booming multi-billion-dollar business, that people also understand the same dialogue that we went through, and understanding the heritage of both electronic music far and wide, I think.
And I'm happy you say that, because when they will get to the roots of it, they're going to love it a lot more.
Yeah,
when they see how much of its history, and that we still have like living legends that can perform their asses off. It's going to be amazing when they start putting us back up there in that way platform, because it doesn't go downhill, it only goes up.
Up! Yes.
Yes, girl.
Yes, I'm here for that.
I love that. It don't go down, it only goes up.
Yeah.
I have to do some extra stretches. At 51, I mean, it's a little tight, but you know, the thing that I find is,
Derrick, you could mix records with no sound.
Beautiful.
I don't think that a lot of people play into their decision factors as experience. Like, there are people who have literally been playing in front of crowds of people for 25, 30 years, for longer than, you know, any of, like, a whole dance floor's worth of people have been alive. And that's not a consideration. Like, you don't think that that can be important. You just want somebody cute, or somebody that's easily marketable, or who has a really cool logo or a nice gimmick. And that is, it overshadows the actual music. It's not the music. What ends up happening is the music doesn't count. The music is secondary, maybe. You know, it's definitely the presentation of the music first, and not what the power of the music actually is.
The dance moves.
Yeah, like
those moves they got up on stage now.
A nice haircut, and he always has a crisp collar, and this is, you know, Mask Dude number 7, and whatever, you know, I was saying, like, his someone with, you know, a rah-rah hairdo, and this is that, and you put them together, and there's your lineup. It's like a bunch of looks, or a bunch of sellers, like things that they get people to buy, and then the music comes in as whatever is, like, you know, fucking Colonel Sanders was on the bill, motherfucker.
That's crazy.
Colonel Sanders, I didn't get a call. Goddamn, what is that?
Well, Colonel Sanders was doing like all those other rich kids. They daddy was buying for.
Shit, Sergeant Sanders. I don't know what's above a colonel. General.
General
Sanders out here buying slots.
Well, we finally got to the M word, which Derrick, you correctly said is marketing. But there's another M word which I like, which we haven't talked about, which is mystique. Now, you've rightly said, you know, that marketing is incredibly important. If you want to make it without marketing now, and you have incredible music, is mystique enough? Derrick, I'm going to put that one in your back to you.
Mystique. You know what? Here's a thing that I'm going to be fully honest about. I don't know anything about mystique. I just don't like doing a lot of shit. Like, I don't like playing the game. I don't like being involved in sort of odd roundtables about things. I have a very nice, comfortable position that I occupy, which is I got my dogs, I got some plants, I walk around, you know, DJ on the weekend. It's a nice, like, little boutique life, and that's my actual authentic living. That's not my cultivating a sense of anything. That's not me attempting to mystify or demystify by any means. This is an authentic way of being. So the mystique is drawn or possibly manufactured again by someone else's lack of knowledge, you know, lack of information. So it's, oh, he don't talk to people. Well, no, I don't talk to people. I mean, that's not, you know, that's just a normal. My daddy don't talk to people either. So shit, that shit runs in the family. So I mean, it's just like it's not mystical. I go to work. When I work, I leave work and I come back to my regular house, and I got a dog that's barking right now. I got another one who's like giving me, "Who are you talking to?" looks. Very, very low, manageable sense of living. And if that's a mystique kind of thing, then I mean, cool. I mean, whatever. I walk around the neighborhood all masked up and just like, in a cape, or it's just a very, I'm a boringly normal person with like a crazy vivid imagination that explodes on the weekends, and I come back and think up a bunch of weird shit to do it again.
Respect for that.
Well, Carl, if it's not about mystique and it's not about marketing, how can we improve this situation?
Oh man, Seth might have a better idea than me. What do you got, Seth?
I think awareness that there's been a problem, or there's been a lack of how do we say this? A lack of notice or intention in booking more people of color. I think very much so in the past few years when we've had the women's and LGBTQ kind of movements, or that once the kind of position or the like where it's like, hey guys, guys, and then the whole industry responded very quickly, and creating inclusion riders, and being more aware of just more aware to book like oh yeah, maybe we should put a woman on this lineup. Oh yeah, is there anyone
trend? To worry about in these things is that sometimes like these industries follow trends. So
yes.
if it's trending LGBTQIA plus, then they're like, oh hey, that's marketable. We got some absolutes. We can get some spin over here. If it's the Me Too movement, we need to include women because women are trending right now. I don't want it to become a cynical or have anything sort of like just because it's the sympathy du jour or whatever.
But it's about creating those things that are trends, long-lasting effects in our community.
Lifestyle, creating a lifestyle for it.
Exactly.
Right, but unfortunately, when things get a bit trendy, that it kind of stays within a box, and it kind of stays within a certain time. So you're thinking like, okay, 2018, 2019 was trendy to have the whole Me Too movement, and if it doesn't stay, then it just becomes like that.
But it has stayed. It
has to stay. And I think the only way that it does stay is to make sure that if you're going to book people in this relation, that you're going to book people who are fucking hot. You're not going to book people who are just kind of like they're doing their things. I don't have a problem with people on computers playing, because it's about music selection. It's about how you can move the crowd with what you do. So whether you could do that with keys or with spoons or with a fiddle or whatever, if that's what keeps the people on the floor, and that's what makes them hot. But I think that when you got to a point of it being like a Me Too thing, whatever, that maybe people weren't looking at quality first, they were just looking at supply and demand.
I think now they have to start looking, because they haven't looked up for quality as much. If they're not like searching for new like black artists, you have to go and search. You can't just rely, like you said. Huh?
No, sorry.
Yeah, like, I feel like you have to go deep, like actual search, like actually do some A&R and look for new black artists that are there, because we're all like online. There's not like
I think
nothing like hidden from anybody right now.
I think as well, like the talent pool isn't small. I'm talking with people of color who are very talented DJs who are making electronic music. It's not like you gotta like start looking under rocks or like starting covers,
But also, if they would have more, we would have more if they weren't like feeling like they're having to look over rocks, I guess.
I've actually been speaking to some people behind the scenes of trying to create and this is something I'd like to talk to all you guys about later, maybe even you, Ralph, could help out here, but trying to create like a black version of Resident Advisor, or like basically a black electronic music or music outlet that focus on kind of promoting black stories and black artists and black history within music. Because the real way to create change or to create some type of situation, even for us to be able to contact each other and have dialogues with each other, or a place where like people are generally kind of lazy, and even if they want to learn about, let's say, quote unquote black music, then like it's like, where is the first place to start? But if you create your own media based platform, and then also if you created a situation much like Resident Advisor, where let's say black artists said exclusively, if you want to buy our tickets, you have to buy them from this site, it creates like a new commerce situation, a social and kind of monetary impact to the scene, and it creates a one source generative kind of platform where people can go, that's run by us, kind of like Fubu, for us, by us, you know.
Well, I mean, I wish that, and speaking of RA and you have DJ Mag, those two were giving out awards. I'm not sure how much Mixmag did, but the flawed aspect of the awards isn't just the payola that happened before that.
I'm just saying, for people to a source,
right?
A
sure.
media source.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that, but I'm the point that I'm trying to make is that because I think with any publication, Billboard should do it. You know, any publication, they should really have a consistency of making sure that people know their history about the music. You know, because there's no consistency with when RA would do their thing. There was no consistency that said like, okay, you know what, we're gonna do like the Legends Award or something that says you know, Sven Vave, Derrick May, Carl Cox, Louis Vega, Kenny Dope, you know, all these guys.
Generation 1 and 2.
Yeah, you know, pay respect to this while we're looking at all these guys that are still doing it, you know, whether it's Dixon that hits #1 on our Resident Advisor, you know, or Octave One hits #1 on
like I also got #1.
Yeah, okay. Boom. You know, but I mean, as things change, there should still be that consciousness of reminding the younger generation of people that are looking at this that, you know, there was some shit that was going on, and these guys are still hot and they're still in the game and blah blah blah. Da, 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 da. So I mean, with doing a FUBU type magazine, I mean, I think that's great, and I'd like to see you push it forward. In the meantime, there's work to be done by these organizations that are out here now, and whether they are in print or not in print, it should be some.
This is why I wanted to hook you up with this Black Music Artist Coalition. Okay, I was like, but this girl, a Laurel, I can't remember her name. They're trying to put out like an actual action statement of like step-by-step things that we can see that the electronic music can look at and take the steps to change immediately. And I think those conversations need to be had between both your generation, between all of our generations, and actually they're trying to put together a kind of like forum, offline forum for us all to speak, and then create one cohesive kind of action statement, and kind of let's like, hey, this is what we see is changeable. This is what we would like to see change, and this is how you can affect the world for tomorrow. And I think when you give people actually step-by-step action plan of like exactly what you think or what we feel are the problems, not just like, hey, this is happening, okay, everyone's aware. It's like, no, like point 1, point 2, like bullet points of exactly, and us coming together as a community, as a Black community, to see how these changes are, and then so people can see actually what cohesively are our kind of qualms or like our problems with what's going on. And what we see as a problem is the only way we're going to kind of, I think, create real lasting change.
Okay.
But yeah, I got to hook you up with these people, the Black Music Action Committee.
Hook it up.
I'm totally down.
Brinta, she's from Chicago, and she's making this really, really incredible situation. Do you know Binta?
No.
You should.
You should. Suppose she is there from what's the name of this company? Nice Work, I guess.
I got pulled into some kind of email thing, but like I had said, I don't really be looking at email things.
Yeah.
So I
actually was talking to them about you and Honey, and I was like, the two people we want to talk about it are the last few people who want to talk about any of this.
Oh, so maybe I'll have to start, paying more attention to some of at least like the communications that I'm getting, because especially, since February, I've never had this much time off. It's amazing. I'm feeling this like internal growth in all these other places because I have to put. Like, I don't have to worry about going away or traveling or being like taking 2 days to recover because I am almost 51 years old and that sort of thing. Like I'm just
blossoming over there.
Yeah,
so amazing.
Like, accept any of these communications. I need to start looking at some emails again. So that may
don't say it too loud because people will be like, "Oh, Derrick just want to stay home." You'll be wondering why you're not getting calls, and they'll be like, "He just want to stay home."
No, they also wants to buy some new shoes. Derrick also wants some extra cheese on top. Derrick gas in his car. Derrick got food for dogs. So yeah, Derrick needs to work, and Derrick's always ready for work. But I had missed some of the communication in this time of sparse communication.
But it's also all of us communicating and coming together and finding out what exactly do we think can change and how we would like to see that change implemented. And I think hopefully electronic music will respond to us like they responded to everyone else and come right about what we need to change in our industry, because electronic music has been somewhat utopian.
Fix it real quick. I know it's cynical as fuck, and I'm totally that person because I think that way sometimes. We need a petition, because if you make a petition, everybody loves the petition. Motherfuckers.
Yeah, that's the thing. If we get like an action statement that you get every black artist to sign of like, hey, this is what we want, then it's like you can't really not get behind that. Should you get Jeff Mills to sign something, everybody can listen. Jeff's signature on that, everyone's like, Jeff Mills agrees.
Right, heavy hitters, some Alfred, some John Hancocks. I'm like, Alfred Hancocks, John Hitchcock.
I don't care about these brothers, but Jeff Mills said yes.
Right,
that's what you talk about Mystique, then, right there.
Yeah.
Huh?
Head of the Black Caucus, Jeff Mills. He's like, hello, how are you all? That's incredible. Like all super soft smoking an alien.
I miss seeing Walgreens.
In Chicago, right? Does he still live in Chicago?
Home Depot, and Jeff Mills is buying screws because he needs them for the store. Like, all right, hey.
Jeff Mills at Home Depot is just an amazing idea.
With a crispy pressed slack.
Yeah, like the pleats. Pleats and boots.
He's he's in Home Depot in his church clothes.
Yeah.
Yes, his car bottoms.
Amazing.
Respect. Hey, man.
Sorry, we got a little tangent there.
That's all right. Now, if you weren't talking about Mystique, I'd say, Derrick, haven't you got a manicure coming up?
I do. I keep looking at the microwave. I'm like talking to you.
I think your microwave is too close to the computer, man.
I actually have to go soon as well.
I mean, Carl, why don't you wrap up with any final thoughts that you want to say to everyone out there watching?
Oh man, well, thank you all for being part of this. Thank you to my brothers and sister there, Derrick and Ariel and Seth, and I'm so happy that we had not only this chance to get together and talk about the state of the union of electronic music, but also that we could present our Say It Loud stage at Junction Festival and really present all my brothers and sisters from Detroit to the people and that hopefully that already know them, but the ones that need to know about them are paying attention, and it's a great thing.
Wonderful. Thank you everyone. Have a great day. See you all soon.
Thank you. Bye.
basically want to ask you about your trip, dog. See how you're doing.
We've been
experiencing a number of advances in terms of taking the club atmosphere and bringing it to the masses by way of the web. And I think that this is one of the most dynamic ways to give the party, the true party atmosphere in the most real sense. To be able to reach so many people through the World Wide Web, I think is such a great advance of technology. And I'm just happy to be a part of anything that wants to move forward and advance the music and bring the music to as many people as possible.
Song. This is one of the songs I did with Carl Craig. Just by chance, I'm pulling it up. This is Drama.
It's one of the sacred grounds for the music. I mean, it's where it started.
So, Richie, when I mention the Detroit scene, what comes to your mind?
10, 15 years of my life, that's what comes to mind. It's the kind of has everything to do with who I am now and where I've come from.
The whole history of Detroit techno started, I suppose you could say, from Kevin Saunderson, Juan Atkins, and Derrick May.
I think we were like way ahead of our time, like 10, 15 years.
Juan had this vision of what he thought the future was all about, what he thought life itself should be projected as in the future. And we became friends, and it was his way of thinking, and it was really fast forward, and it was interesting, and it was something we had never seen before in our lives, man.
So we all went to high school together, me, Juan, and Derrick. Derrick learned from Juan, basically, which I think started for him in 70, maybe 79, with a group called Cybertron. Derrick started putting out music. So for some reason, I just felt like I had to put out music too.
One of the most influential, I think, to a wider group of people at that point was The Wizard, who was on radio, and that was, otherwise known now as Jeff Mills. Jeff had a radio show 5 or 6 days a week, half an hour, 45 minutes, probably around 9 o'clock at night on WJLB, the biggest, urban station really Detroit had or has. And he was just pumping out the craziest stuff. Hip-hop, Public Enemy to Derrick May to Kraftwerk.
How would you define Detroit techno sound?
Minimal, very funky, very soulful.
How do you infuse soul into machines?
You just gotta work them. You gotta work them like they've never been worked.
We live in a city that is very industrial. We have seen the decomposition of the city, and we've been able to relate that into what we've done with our music.
What about Motown? Was there any, did the fact that Motown was here?
No.
Okay.
Now Motown, I mean, any kid that's from Detroit obviously has
been a part of, you know, the surroundings of Motown.
The industrial view of Motown and how to make records, and then the rebels from Motown like Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder and Norman Whitfield, who were able to change the face of what Motown was, as well as the face of music. And it kind of opened up our views and made our mentality broader to be able to relate to the mechanical music of Kraftwerk, or, you know, the strangeness of Visage.
We fade to gray. And all of these influences, along with the development of house music coming out of Chicago, all had its influence on Detroit.
When this music came out, there was a club called the Music Institute, which is where most of the Detroit sound was being formed and produced, and you would hear that sound at that club.
In some ways, a poor excuse for a club, and maybe standards there. There was no bar, there was no alcohol, there was no, you know, like flashy lights. It was like a strobe light and one hell of a system. And it was just like, Derrick had a track called The Dance. And I don't know why I recorded it, why I called that, but that's what it was all about to me and to a lot of people back then. It was like going into this dark room and just losing yourself.
A culture, really, that was generated out of a black crowd, a black scene here, then got co-opted by, like, white Brits. Why do you think that happened?
The British press. I blame it all on the British press.
As fascinating as it might seem, we don't have any idea how that happened. We don't know. Of course, we had this association and this real attachment to black soul music, but we had more infatuation with what was going on over there. So when it jumped, it seemed almost like maybe we wished it, or maybe somehow we subconsciously made music more for them than for us.
Overall, it was a good thing. You know, I don't feel ripped off. I think it was just the process of evolution, more or less.
In the beginning, when Derrick would make a record, then I'll get excited about making a record. When Juan would make a record, we all get excited over each other, and it would be like a competition also, because we all want to have the hottest record.
And we had people coming in from France and from Japan and from Switzerland and from the UK, all coming in and doing interviews saying, wow, this is a great record and da-da-da-da. And immediately they would go to KMS, because they have an area that they call Techno Boulevard. Right. Because at one point, KMS, Model 500, which is Juan Atkins' label, and Transmat were all in the same general area. In fact, the buildings were all kitty corner from each other.
Originally downstairs here was the studio for Juan Atkins from Metroplex. And upstairs was my home and studio.
Right.
Now it's just my home, and downstairs is a recording studio and an office. And, you know, we've turned this whole block into, it's our block now, it's a Transmat block. We miss, I mean, KMS not there anymore, really. It's sad, you know, because we really always believed we could do something here in the city, but we've never really had the support of the community. It's just not here.
Detroit was just like the rest of the country. You know, the mainstream media and audience had no idea that, you know, they had people that were flying overseas and, you know, right in their own backyard, you know, and doing things and being recognized overseas. I mean, they had no idea of that.
We've done some amazing things, not just myself and my guys, but the underground resistance guys. Various people in Detroit have done all kinds of things.
And let's be realistic. That, you know, the U.S. is still a lot of racial barriers in the U.S. And I think that there's a lot of that probably also that played a role in us not being, I guess, more popularized.
I didn't know what this music was, and eventually when I went to the record shop and found these records and then actually saw that it said Detroit, I was amazed because I actually thought it was from Europe. Yeah, you know, and little did I know it was in my own backyard, and that was just wow.
When I started traveling, like, for example, to the UK in like 1993, 1994, and I was meeting with all these, you know, various producers and the big name cats over there, and they were just always used to the idea of a big studio, even though they were making dance tracks just like we were, and they were trying to figure out how to make their records sound like ours. And we tried to explain, well, you know, we don't have all this big, massive, you know, 48-track digital, high-tech, whatever.
We did this back in the day before we had all the digital stuff we have nowadays, which is over there. I guess we could show the disco gear. That's what this was done on over there. The disco gear.
In Detroit, it was real hands-on. It was, in a lot of ways, very low-tech. And it was really about grabbing the idea, capturing it, and then just moving on, you know, and trying never to look back.
The culture of this music is very DJ orientated. It's the culture is about putting two records together, but making something new, experimenting with it, using effectors, using whatever, as well as the majority of the music that's being made in techno and drum and bass and et cetera, is all music that is created and fueled by DJs or people who have a DJ mentality.
One of the Detroit secrets about this record and many other records is the fact that this record could be played on a different pitch by electro DJs in Detroit. Sped up on 45, it works in an electro DJ set. That's a Detroit phenomenon that's unique only to Detroit, pretty much.
Because of the elements from which the music developed, it kind of added its own identity to it. And a part of that was being limited on equipment and limited on big studio. I mean, I don't have a big major studio now.
And when you put the needle on the record for a typical Detroit record and another techno record or another record from outside, that's what kind of grabbed you. You know, it had, I guess part of the humanity was still left in there. It hadn't been too computerized.
This record is a worldwide phenomenon. It's actually one of the bigger and biggest 12 inches that has come out of Detroit in a while. Well, the EP is called The Knights of the Jaguar EP on Underground Resistance, produced by Mad Mike and Rolando.
There's some sort of fight going on with Underground Resistance and Sony Music right now.
Yeah,
what's up with that?
Yeah, there's actually been a trance cover version of the song that we're listening to at the moment, which was played note by note by some German producers, I'm told. And there wasn't an agreement to actually pursue that.
And what's your stance on the whole Jaguar track versus Sony?
We just want to say to all you motherfuckers out there, don't fake the funk, and it's not right to steal soul, you know. It's bullshit. That's our stand.
Technically, they can do it, but it's a diss. And it also says, basically that, y'all, we ain't coming to y'all, we ain't gonna sign y'all, we don't want y'all, none of y'all. And that's just the way it is, and that's a hard, real reality that we all must face. That if we're gonna continue to make this music and do what we do, we will simply be blueprints and we will simply lay down new roads for others to travel on. Because they're not gonna let us ride the roads. They'll let us build the roads, but we ain't gonna travel those roads. Not unless we build our own cars and make our own way.
Detroit techno, honestly, I don't believe has a sound any longer. I think Detroit techno is just modern music, and it's been able to grow past what was considered electro or considered technology music. It's like modern blues or modern soul.
All the Detroit producers, all the techno DJs from Detroit, they all played house as well as techno.
House music is just blown up big time, and we still sell a lot of techno, but primarily we're concentrating on house music.
Unfortunately, a lot of the younger producers that are coming into the scene view techno as being a European thing. They're looking at the Prodigies, the Fatboy Slims, Crystal Method, all these various groups and influences that come from the European side of things. And then they say, okay, wow, I want to try to incorporate what I'm doing to sound like that, which I have no problem with, but the thing that gets lost is the Detroit element.
Ten years ago, you had one big party, everybody was happy. Now, you got the kids want to get their little piece of the pie, and it's fine, but, there's been altercations on account of that, and it's just gotten crazy over the years.
When it first started, parties were nice and cheap, and it was all about the love of music, the love of people. Nowadays, it's all about making money.
When I started, it was the majority were the white suburban kids, but now there's more of the African Americans and the Hispanic Americans that come, but they don't really come for the drugs as what most everybody wants to think, but they come to hear the DJs, they come to hear the music.
I almost feel like we're at the point now where it's like the prologue slowly coming to an end and the first act's really about to begin, and that's what we're going to see over in the next couple of years. There's 3 or 4 places that have opened in the last few months alone, and several more to come.
Detroit is one of the leading cities in America for electronic dance music. I think that Detroit is going to always be checked for reference to what is going on at the moment.
I think the biggest thing that's finally happened in Detroit, and I think all cities need to go through this, is there's now developed, there's an intelligent dance music crowd. There's people that have, went through the whole raver thing, the parties and everything when they were younger, and they still want to be into the music. They still want to go out and dance. It's still their passion, but they want to do it at a place where they can go and drink and at a nightclub.
Half the reason we get the attention that we do is because we are the techno club in Detroit, which means for that reason alone, all eyes are on us, simply because of the work that people did before us. You know, what these people have done with the music over these years and the way it's branched out across the world, that sort of instantaneously created some sort of curiosity. Then what must the club be like that does that in Detroit? And so it's what we try and live up to.
The internet is the biggest phenomenon concerning techno. That's the worldwide force and phenomenon behind most of electronic music and dance music as we know today.
As a music journalist, who are the people that are making waves in Detroit right now that you think are special?
Carl Craig, without a doubt. Carl is the only genius I know. And what he's done just in the past year, you've seen him make a major push in not just, you know, taking the music further with his Interzone Orchestra, honestly trying new things and succeeding and taking it all over the world.
He's like helping organize a big electronic musical festival in May at our Hart Plaza in Detroit, and I'm really excited to see what goes in with that.
I'm just a student of all styles because I try to keep my mind as open as possible. You know, there's some things I can't stand, whether it's country, western, or something. But you know, there's a lot still to be learned within that. You know, whether it's that or music that they'll play at a Greek strip club or something.
I'll always be Detroit. I mean, you can take the boy out of Detroit, but you can't take Detroit out of the boy. So you know what I mean? I'm gonna always be a Detroit boy.
And that's the basics of what little bit I had of the song.
Welcome to Speaker's Corner at J2v. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Martha, and today I'm joined by 4 members of the Union Collective, a Palestinian-based art and music crew. So we have Saruna. Hello.
Hi.
DJ Dar.
Hello.
Darback.
Hi.
And Sama. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to you guys helping me get a better understanding of Palestine's relationship to techno, this music of unity and resistance. To get us going, Sama, shall we start by getting a bit of insight into your music journey so far? Would you be able to take me back because I would like to know what your earliest memory connected to music or sound is.
That is a tough one. It can go in between piano and Michael Jackson. That is my first memory. My sister used to take piano lessons, and my mom used to always play Michael Jackson. So, and after that, I started taking piano lessons, and I started listening to Michael Jackson. So that's how it started.
And how about DJing? How did you first come to start being a selector and a DJ?
I was a kid in high school, I was a kid, and we had issues in parties that we didn't really have DJs, so we used to play whatever's on the radio or fight over who's gonna play his CD. So I just wanted to play the music, and my dad just went along with it. So I started DJing for birthdays, school events, things like that, and then it just started growing from there, and then I studied it at university and became professional.
Okay. So when you were at university, is that where electronic music came into the mix?
Yeah, when I first went to uni when I was 18, I went to study in Lebanon, and that's the first time I heard techno. And I got really into it. Then I went and studied audio engineering and music production, and one of my teachers, who is now kind of part of the collective as well. He was a DJ in Canada, and he played tribal music. So he was teaching me how to properly DJ instead of what I was doing, which was not DJing really. I was pressing play and just, you know.
So is that where you sort of began to learn the intricacies of mixing and DJing as kind of like an art form?
Exactly. That's when I started getting what DJs do. Actually, when I started living in Lebanon, that's when I realized that everything I was doing was off. I went there and I was like, oh, that is what a DJ does. Okay, now I get it. Okay, cool. I wasn't DJing.
The big realization.
Yeah, big one, yeah.
Tell me about your role in kind of helping to build the scene in Ramallah via Haifa.
Well, I started doing parties in Ramallah after I started studying in music production. So I started trying out to do what I saw in Lebanon back home. Didn't really work. Then I met Fida from Haifa, who came to Palestine, to Ramallah, to do the first venue or open the first pub that allows like these things. And anyways, I think the fact that she stood with the idea of doing that party is the reason why it started happening, because after me failing 3 times, I started a bit distancing myself from the idea of, okay, maybe this won't work, you know, this is just like in my head. But the fact that she stood by it that much and she worked in that way, you know, I was a DJ, she was an organizer. So she managed to do that and get people from Haifa to Ramallah, introduce us to each other and create this boom that happened all of a sudden. And from us having no parties, it turned to us having parties every month to every week. And then all of a sudden it just started happening if different organizers started showing up and doing their own events and more DJs appearing. And then it started creating these groups of people that are always doing parties together, mostly house parties. Then one day it just like, I don't know why, I wanted to make a festival. And I contacted Karam al-Dirar, and I was like, because I'm living in France, so I'm not really on the ground. So I need somebody in Palestine to do the thing, and I can help from here. So I contacted Karam al-Dirar and Dar and Derrick. Why are your names so close? Anyway, I contacted Dar and Derrick, and we decided to create this community, this collective of artists. And we brought in Saruna and the rest of the crew. And yeah, it's just these small things of, you know, just connecting with friends and trying to create the space that you wish you have back home.
Well, that brings us nicely on to hearing a bit more about the collective. So let's open up our conversation back to the rest of you guys. Who would be up for telling me a bit more about Union Collective, starting with when you formed and how you work together?
I was gonna give it to Karam because
I knew there.
We all were going looking at you, Durar.
Well, so I believe that our first major party for Union hit in 2018, and that was our New Year's party. And it really brought a lot of people together to a new venue that we had discovered. Karam had discovered this venue, and we transformed it into a space that identified with us. It was something that honestly had changed the landscape in Ramallah. And how it turned was that bringing all these different people with different backgrounds, visual artists, graphic designers, craftsmen. Like we had a carpenter on the team working with us. Like just all these people came together, and yeah, we hit this really big party. It was one of the first parties in Ramallah that I would say that the venue had more than one dance floor, so people were able to like move from one space to another. We had 12 DJs in one night. Like in Ramallah, one of the biggest problems that we have is the time limits. So we were able to break that and like keep going till
There was no, I stopped the party. The first time in my life, I stopped the party because we needed to go home. It was going on for like more than 12 hours. And everybody was using my equipment because we don't have equipment. So my laptop has been playing for a day, you know, and my equipment, and I'm like, I really need to sleep. And the police didn't shut us down. Nobody's gonna shut us down, and we can go on forever. Please, someone stop it. You know, like when you feel like, because we don't put an end point to a party. We never put the party is from 7 to 4. We just put from 8 till it closes down, because it always closes down. But they didn't find us that day, and nobody just couldn't close the party. So all of a sudden we're in the next day, and we're like, oh my God, nobody's looking for, like, this just got out of hand.
So what changed for that party? Like, why are we not restricted by the police that day?
I didn't know we were in luck.
We were blessed. We were in luck, I would say. I mean, there was a combination. Yeah. I think there was also that we're talking about New Year's. There's definitely a lot of parties happening. So we were in a very new location. It was, the team all organized. We had, it was not a public event per se. We were sending invitations, tell a friend. It was really that in that approach. So it was really all, I guess it was all really underground in many ways. And I mean, literally the party was underground.
Yeah. I think I would like to add that, I mean, the reasons why we ended up with Union Collective is a lot of struggle that we all kind of went through around each other, but it was a mainstream music scene that was taking over, and it was hard for us to find the space to play our sounds. And of course, there was a very small audience, and there was a little bit of, I would say, lack of collaboration, and it kind of felt that we need to have that space where we all can be who we want to be, and we can play the sounds we want to play, and we can have the place where other artists can come and say, I want to build this for you, I want to play this thing for you, and it kind of grow in that way. And we were lucky to have such a good space, and we have intimate parties. It feels close. You feel it's not just a commercial kind of, let's have fun, only, which is nice.
I would love to hear about another party that you guys have put on together, something that was just really a special moment for you, just to get even a better understanding of what your parties are like.
Well, there's the PMX one, which was the end of our parties, because that's when they caught us. Yeah. That one was a bit mental as well, I think. Right? What else do we have? They have done most.
Someone played a 6-hour set. You played a 6-hour set once.
Right.
That was a really good.
That's true. I did a full-on 6-hour. I did it 2 parties after each other. It was what? It's a Thursday and a Friday.
Back to back.
I played 10 till it was closed the first day. And the next day I played 6 hours. I was trying to see if I could play 6 hours. And when they came to close us down, the police, I was standing there and I'm like, dude, just one more track. And he's looking at me and they're looking at me and they're like, so we've been playing for 6 hours. What track do you still want to play? And I was just on, you know?
We organized, as a union, we would also find other venues to go to. So we would branch out and just host different parties here and there, bring the same vibe. It was really all about the atmosphere, building that vibe, bringing artists in, trying to put disco balls all around the place, put mirrors. It was really all about creating a really safe space.
I think it was nice that we also moved, like when we had when it was winter, we kind of went underground. You could hear the sounds are also a little bit different of the DJs. And when it's summer, we had a beautiful swimming pool by the location, which we used to do like a day party. And it was kind of, different, like Asfur Shams maybe was also one of the parties we organized outside in nature, very close to Ramallah. And it's just amazing to see the input of all the artists. Like you walk around and you're like, crazy, how do you guys do all of this, you know, like
you spend all night doing it, eh?
I think that's the point that the community is the same. Like, community is small. They're the same people as the DJs and the people dancing and the one doing the installations and the art. So it creates an intimate place for everybody. So everybody feels like they belong there and, you know, they're comfortable there. You know, this is my couch from my house. It's like in the middle of the thing, you know. It's more of creating that space because we are also, as they said, not a big crowd. So creating that place where we can all just be whatever we want to be. And that time span is really good because, I don't know, it just unites us in really weird circumstances. In an underground kitchen.
I would like to hear a bit from each of you guys about, we've kind of heard from Sama already, but how did each of you guys grow your relationship to music and DJing, and how did you guys come to settle on more electronic sounds as the best way to express yourself? Saruna, would you maybe go first?
Sure. I'd actually started learning classical Arabic music. So I started out like really old school conservatory type situation. And then I ended up going to school in the States. I went to Berkeley College of Music, and I studied music production and engineering, which kind of geared my musical life into more of an electronic direction. So after that, I mean, I've always wanted to DJ. I think the first time I saw a DJ, I was like, oh, that looks like incredible. I want to do that. And like with the turntables, and I was really into hip hop, and I had this whole phase. And then after I finished school, I'd come back here, and I wasn't really into the scene before. So when I came back, I wanted to explore what was really going on. And the more I met people, the more into electronic music I started to become more interested in making it, not just going to parties and witnessing it. So, and then I met these guys and started DJing, and slowly kind of grew into this space where I was experimenting with different types of music. And so it was an interesting journey. So I think electronic music, just because also it feels very contemporary for me, at least, like the sounds, the textures, and the choices that you can make when you're making a track, and the impact it can have, and the emotional reaction you get out of people, I think is very strong. I think very different to other types of genres I work around, because I also produce music, so I kind of dabble in different genres. But yeah, electronic music seems to always have a different impact, for me at least, than other types of music I've been involved with.
Would you be able to describe the kind of impact that you see or you receive from the crowd when you play in Palestine?
Well, I think there's a strong sense of a need to escape, and And so, you know, there's also, you know, that's the danger, right? At the same time, because, you know, doing music just to escape it can kind of disconnect you from also the impact that it really is trying to serve. But I think people were just really invested and into it, and very like present, very, very present and very with you, and you kind of feel like it's all like everybody needs to release something, and you're there to help people release that. So it feels very personal, and at the same time it feels incredible because you're kind of there and you're vibing off people, and it's almost like everyone feels the way you do, and you feel the way they do, and it's kind of this really cool relationship.
Would anyone else like to add to that? Maybe a story of a time that you've been DJing where you've really felt like you're offering the crowd something special that they really need?
Oh, every time. I always express it as it's like the especially if you're doing a closing set, it's like a proper massage, you know, and then you see people's faces going, oh my God, I need this, you know, and you feel that because I've been there, and it does feel like that. So especially closing sets, they're really needed.
Okay.
Would
anyone else like? Yeah.
For me, a lot of the it was very much in the beginning where it was a lot of the house parties that we would host, and we would just go do different house parties, and just the different atmosphere, the vibe that electronic music can give you, the dark room, that safety. I think that's what it is. It's all about just that feeling safe in a space to do what you want. And I felt that was one of the first times where I was like, you know, I really love what I'm doing here. And then slowly we started growing out to going into public spaces. But I think at the very beginning, where it was at a house level, that's where it really felt safe. And
when it was at that level, how important would you say that like partying and raving was for like you as a young person, your mental health at that point?
I mean, I think that's where my journey began, is simply because there weren't these spaces. I put my hand on a first controller trying to just figure out what it means to do, just to simply have something else going on in Ramallah. And that's how me and Karam connected and started. He got a controller, I got a controller. We started like just playing together and doing all these different parties. And I think when we first started, it just came out of that almost very selfish desire to do this. And I remember parties where I would turn around and there's one person dancing. And I remember parties where I'd turn around and there's like 200 people dancing. And, you know, we went from 1 to 100. And it took years to get to that. And it really, you know, you found an audience. And of course, we're like, the idea was never like, we're going to take over Palestine with techno. It's more or less like, hey, there is techno. There is electronic music here. You could find it here. And we were just happy about that.
Derrick, would you like to share a story of how you came to start having a kind of affinity to DJing and electronic music?
Yeah, I've been connected to music since a little bit, but I've never studied it or been close to work with it. But because I did film, so I had a little bit of closer look, and I got exposed a little bit to more house and trance when I was popping off at the early to mid 2000, and then when returned to Palestine, and you know, we kind of didn't have a place where we can go and listen to the stuff that we like. We ended up opening the houses, and luckily I was seeing Dirar and also another friend of ours who they were having a very tiny controller. It lived for like, I don't know, 6-7 years, and they were playing their tunes on it. And from that on, we were like, yeah, this is what we gotta do. We gotta play in these house parties. And we played all like very different styles of electronic music. People were tortured at some point, but we managed to find our sound, and we somehow realized that we have quite a good base of audience. So the moment we had a chance to actually take over a venue. We had this conversation of like, oh, we don't want to go public, we want to stay underground, but it was kind of, we want also the people to hear the sounds that we like and to feel the feelings that we want to share. And that kind of was a really good try. It kind of got us to a point to think like, yeah, we have to keep doing this, and we gotta kind of give the space for other people, the youngsters, to also perform. So in a way, we kind of ended up with Union, and maybe a lot of what we do nowadays is like more organizing than DJing and having that space. But yeah, it's very nice to see that growth, and it kind of, I think the dance floor is something that we missed, and it's the community kind of environment that gives us that feeling of staying away from racism and sexism, and having that comfort in expressing ourselves, and sharing a type of dance that is usually an individual kind of dance, but we have it in this kind of social big group where like it's a very good feeling.
And was there one particular party or a moment where you sort of looked around at the people present and thought, oh, these aren't just like my friends or people I know, like there's started to be sort of like an external group who are coming to this?
Yeah,
and you sort of realize it's bigger.
I think the New Year's party, the first big party that we throw, it was very fulfilling because it was for us as a team, realizing that we can do a lot, and being around the audience that was not just an audience, they were like the family, they were like part of the organizing, they were like kind of too involved, and it kind of, we had much more fun seeing that, and we see the people wanting more and we see younger DJs or like younger people like trying to start to jump in and DJ, which is it's very nice to see.
What was really cool for that first party, and also the second New Year's that we threw, we had people book. We had published that the event is going to happen. We were sending it out to emails, so people in Germany found out about the party, and we had this groups of Germans and Berliners just coming down to Ramallah. I personally met about 10 people that came from.
There's a group that we stopped in the middle of the party, and we're like, wait, you seriously flew in from Berlin? And they're like, yeah. And we're like, but our friends flew to Berlin to have New Year's. We were planning to fly somewhere to have New Year's. You flew, like, you seriously trusted it to a point to waste New Year's on coming and partying in, like, what? And they were having a blast, honestly. And we were just standing there like, oh, maybe we pulled it off.
It was the best investment they made.
Honestly, yeah.
For a lot of
and
people.
Our reaction to that party, to that New Year's party, how shocked we were. We partied for another like a day. We did a house party for another day, just like 5 people, just us getting shocked of what happened in New Year's. It was so like, it was fully packed, and it was fully packed. And we don't like, it's not like we know everybody. Like, we don't know a lot of people that are there, and we're just standing there, what is happening? Like, how did it just happen like today? And then when the sun came up, I just look at somebody and I'm like, guys, what time is it? And they're like, it's 10. And I'm like, what? And they're like, it's 10 in the morning. And I'm like, wait, what? It's 10 in the morning? What? The sun is up. What? And it was just like this, everything about it was shocking. And even the way we worked together, because we don't have somebody standing at the door that is hired. We don't have, there's none of these people. We are the sound people. We are the ticketing people. It's all of us. I'm standing at the door for a while. Dirar is for a while. I'm the sound technician downstairs and upstairs. We're the security. We are the people taking care of the people. We're the bartenders and the DJs. And like, we are every character of the team. And, we're standing by code check. We're doing literally everything and running up and down the stairs because we have 2 floors. And after that, like, we didn't really party that day, but it was the best time we've had in our lives. So we partied afterwards.
We haven't been partying in a long time, I feel. I feel like it simply got into organizing. It's just been organizing. I think that's the downplay for us, is that a lot of it has become work, where the start was always, yeah, we're having fun, this is a party. Now
yeah, you like to get invited to other parties. You're like, yeah, I can party today.
Please.
Well, let's talk a bit more about the logistics. Like, what does it actually take to put on a party? Because you don't have like many just clubs that you can just turn up and do a party in, do you? You have to like,
no, we don't have
start from scratch.
Yeah.
Zero clubs.
Zero clubs. So how does it work if you want to try and put a party on? What kind of spaces are you using?
Guys.
So
well, yeah. I mean, I think the main spaces we have are like bars or lounges that we used to turn into a dance floor kind of, and other alternatives that could go beyond like the regular times of like midnight or 1 o'clock that music have to shut down for a party that is starting at 9 or 10 p.m. You know, we had to go to hotels or like spaces that were allowed to do that, and we also at the same time didn't want to be in a hotel. You know, we wanted to be in a real space where we actually represent ourselves in, and I think we were super lucky to find the space that we started to do a little bit of parties in, mainly the union parties in. And it was very flexible, where we managed to actually build 2 dance floors and kind of have the feeling of being on a dance floor where, you know, you're just dancing. There's no people sitting or having dinner, or like, you know, people complaining about the sounds. It's in a place that they're used to go to every day. So I think that the main thing was that it's quite hard to find a place where you can just listen to the music and dance. And that's the space that we managed to kind of open. Coming from the house, that was kind of like the recreation of the house party into a bigger underground venue.
And then also just like we had carpenters, like we designed sets from scratch. We got a DJ booth made because we were just trying to, you know, make sense of the space. So like we wouldn't have like one sound system. Sometimes it was like 2 different sound systems, and then we changed the position every party to see like whichever place it worked best. So just like things like these that made it very like experimental, and trying to just craft space that could, because it's also not really ours, like it's not, so it has to go back to functioning into a regular space after we're done. So, you know, I had to be mindful of being as creative as possible and pushing the limits as much as we could, with all the lack of resources and lack of space that already exists. So yeah, it was fun. It was like very challenging and very tiring for sure, but it was incredibly rewarding, and we had a blast. I mean, long nights were spent planning and organizing, and yeah.
I think
what was some of the... Oh, sorry, go for it.
I think naturally a lot of artists like kind of became more involved, and we also had like a sound engineer who gave us the basic equipment. He was like really working hard to get better equipment. He was like becoming more involved, and it was nice because it kind of, you see everyone that worked around that production of a party is becoming more, you know, partying with us and being more involved, and not thinking of all the, you know, capitalist structures that have been, you know, forming the party scene in many commercial places, I would say.
What were some of the challenges that you guys would run into in those days?
Yeah, I mean, we I don't know, you can speak maybe a little bit about our restrictions.
Yeah.
We have pretty tough laws when it comes to venues have to close at 12 o'clock. So that's a bit challenging when people come out at 10, and also always want to continue. Like it just never ends at 12. So we always have that challenge when it comes to the law. Of course, we have various challenges when it comes to culture and how does culture see us and perceive us, and how do we have that understanding. These are challenges that are faced by, I imagine, all techno or electronic communities around the world when they first start off. We pretty much have the same challenges. Of course, then the main overarching challenge that we have is that we also live under a different context and a different situation where Palestine is under occupation, and we have a lot of these challenges that just happen to be there. They are alive and they do exist. So I've had personally maybe 2 or 3 events where I couldn't do them simply because there were people that got killed on that day. So we have these major challenges where, on one hand, you want to celebrate and live life and do what you want to do and feel free and have that space, and then you collide immediately with a reality. And I think these are some of our major challenges when it comes down to it. Thinking about the context that we live in, it's not just a normal space where we can throw a party, have fun, and just go home and whatever. But there's a lot more, and also for us as organizers, this is a challenge for us to just think like, what are we doing? Are we, we need to keep these things in our mind. We need to think about how to think about them, how to have responses to them, and so on. So I think this is some of the major challenges that we have.
Obviously, we're all talking right now from different places, and you guys have mentioned a couple of cities so far. So what I kind of understand, and please tell me if this isn't right, but it seems like the scene across Palestine is quite fragmented, and DJing in one city can be just a completely different experience to DJing in another city. So that we can get an idea of how broadly these experiences can vary, would everyone perhaps like to share an experience of like recently what it's been like to DJ where you are right now? Osama, you're not there, but who else is not in Palestine?
Cool.
Yeah. But maybe just a recent experience, just so that we can see how the varying scale of what it's like to DJ in that climate.
Well, I could say that my last party was canceled due to Corona. So and I think Saruna also had a party this weekend or last weekend, right?
Yeah.
So it's been a little difficult this whole year. It's been challenging, I think, for all of us here to actually do events, due first to the Corona, but we also had some challenges earlier in the year. Around February, there were the political climate here was just too tense to actually have and hold anything. But when it comes to different cities, honestly, the main cities that are hosting parties are Ramallah and Bethlehem, and there's also an emerging scene in Jerusalem. But we can't go to Jerusalem, except Saruna here, I think. But we can't go. None of us here.
She is from Jerusalem.
Yeah, she is from Jerusalem, so she could go to Jerusalem.
The only one that can do it.
So the major 2 cities that host electronic music events are Bethlehem and Ramallah. And I'm in Jenin right now, so maybe.
No, we talked about this. Don't.
You mentioned lockdown. How do you guys think that this extended period of lockdown will impact on the techno scene in Palestine? Do you think it will be like just a pause and then things will hopefully be able to resume, or is there anything that you've been able to reflect on this time indoors that you think will benefit you guys creatively at all?
I don't know. I would say that I think it's maybe it's a good time to have a little break where artists can focus on their production and collaboration, and you can see a lot of young DJs who are coming up who are actually using the time to like improve, where we're having sometimes some sessions together. You can see there's Radio Al Hara that just recently came up, where they like widen the knowledge of production of the history of original music, and they're offering spaces not only to artists but also to selectors and people who are involved in other fields to come and speak online, and it had a great kind of echo. So I think what I would say the main hard thing is us getting together, throwing a party. We've been, I would say, economically never dependent on this because it's been a hobby and something we love. But I would say a lot of artists are, in general, around the world, are struggling with, the Corona situation. But we hope that we can use some of this time to like plan a little bit more, maybe be able to work a little bit on some workshops and to connect virtually in a certain way. Maybe plan a festival.
Yeah, finally.
With social distancing.
Okay. Does anyone else have any thoughts on how lockdown might affect the scene?
Well, it's scary, honestly. Just because it's already really small, and then taking away all the gigs, it's put it in a really dangerous place, and it's very unpredictable. So we're kind of just playing it by ear. I mean, politically, economically, everything is kind of hanging by the balance right now. So it's really tough to be able to say whether it's like been permanently impacted. And I think the music industry worldwide has been, I think, in my opinion, permanently impacted by this, which is maybe a good thing. I mean, yes, the consequences are extreme, and a lot of us depend on this financially, and so it's really hard to tell now what might come out of this, especially because the political landscape might be changing very drastically. So that also plays another huge role over whether parties will be a thing at all. So just kind of waiting, maybe looking at alternative things that can be done, projects, workshops, collaborations, so yeah, hopefully, I mean, ideally all of this would be over, but yeah, it's a little too soon to tell whether it's had a massive impact yet or not.
Well, unless anyone had anything else that they wanted to add to that, I wanted to ask you guys about the DJs for Palestine hashtag movement that started not too long ago. Sama, maybe you could share with us how that kind of made you feel at the time, and maybe we could then think about, maybe you guys could explain to me the kind of initial direct impact of that being spoken about, and did you see any change around that time?
Honestly, the thing is that though techno is very related to politics, when it came out, a lot of people talk a lot about how we should disconnect politics from music, and that always creates a debate. But with Palestine especially, we always find that people find it a very sensitive subject to talk about, so they prefer not to. They would talk about all the injustices in the world, but this one they would just like, they just don't want to get into it. And so we got used to that. It became the normal for us. So when that happened and they just stood with us like that and they came out with that statement, for us it was like, oh wow, wait, what? This could happen. Okay, people are actually listening and people are speaking. And when they were attacked this much, we honestly thought like anywhere else they were gonna back down from the statement, and they didn't. And that gave us so much. It gave us such a big push that, okay, then maybe there is hope, at the end of the line, and for me it felt good coming from the scene where I always went to run away from politics, and I felt that people don't want to discuss it, so I just like always refrained from talking about it. But the fact that they did just gave me hope that maybe one day it can go into that. And yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like to add and say that I think music has always been political, even in the Palestinian heritage and in other cultures. But it's also been the force for unity and resistance in a way. And I think there's, I don't know, it's important for musicians and artists to highlight injustice. And that was mainly, I would say, what DJs for Palestine did. They shed the light on the Palestinian struggle, and maybe that for us give us a little bit of hope to have a little bit of awareness. Maybe one day we can, have liberation and live as normal human beings and be able to express and party without being looked at as normal people throwing parties and playing techno and like there's female DJs and all. It's like to be looked at as equal. And we think that it's good to feel that kind of unity globally with DJs for Palestine.
Yeah. Can I also add just a thing that also like the importance of acts of solidarity that especially in an industry that often puts aside and forgets and maybe deliberately the marginalized communities that created this music, like house and techno and hip hop all came out of African American, often queer, often female, often any marginalized community that sort of creates this art, and then that gets capitalized on and turned into something that is made for consumption instead of staying true to what it actually represented. And I think the importance of doing solidarity and practicing solidarity is also recognizing that there's an intersectionality between these things. The thing with DJs for Palestine was that it highlighted maybe for the first time in the electronic music scene that the importance of not forgetting that aspect, and the fact that the Palestinian struggle and resistance goes side by side with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the feminist movement, with the queer liberation movement. It all comes hand in hand, and I think that's important to not forget that this was made by marginalized people, and therefore it cannot be depoliticized. So I think that was a huge, huge step in that direction.
Absolutely. So we are coming towards the end of our chat, but I would really love to hear from each of you what your hopes or goals are for, or even dreams are for Palestine's techno scene.
A festival. I still want that festival.
You want this. It will happen.
Yes, I really believe that it can make a difference. And I will have fun.
I'm excited to see the next generation of folks come in and taking our place, organizing and doing. So I'm excited for that, to see that, to actually start going to parties, and also I'm excited to see more cities being involved. I think that's what it seems really right now with everything, and it's so hard to really plan. But my hopes are for the next generation that they can carry on what we've been doing lately, and they can, grow it. And we'll have a proper scene here where people could come from all around the world, even if it, hopefully that will come to a festival at the end point. Yeah.
The festival. See, I told you it's the festival, man. It will all go back to the festival.
In a few
I
years,
think I would hope to see like a defragmentation and maybe decentralization in terms of like having moving outside of Ramallah, going into maybe more conservative areas, and trying to introduce this, you know, concept to maybe other communities, and involving the community in that process. And, you know, because of the political reality, you know, like, you know, that being, ideally there would be no fragmentation of the entire music scene, right? Because you have Haifa and Jerusalem and Gaza and then the West Bank, and it's all just this kind of, so, you know, yeah, ideally there would be none of that, and hopefully we could branch out.
That is with freedom, but that comes after freedom.
Well, that's part of the dream, isn't it?
4 steps before that. The festival, then the new generation, then freedom, then that one.
Yeah, no, it's definitely nice to see that, and it's nice to see the younger generation coming up, more productions happening, much more collaboration, and hopefully more venues, and kind of a little bit more, I don't know, reflection on our experiences and on our community, on, you know, what does this mean to us, and how can you express yourself in the ways that you would like to. And festival, definitely. We have
festival. I win at the end.
Amazing. So there was obviously the DJs for Palestine movement, which did spark conversation amongst people who are just music lovers, not DJs. But outside of Palestine, what can we be doing to help, you know, for people who aren't involved in working in music? How can music lovers worldwide support?
I think it is just mainly knowing about the problem, especially if they're gonna come and talk about it with you. But it's I think it is a problem that a lot of people talk about, and a lot of people just turn a blind eye on and just really don't want to get into it. But that adds to the problem. And I think people getting to know the problem and actually going and seeing it more before they decide on who's, you know, right and wrong, because people decide to throw judgments, especially on this one, without actually seeing the place, or, you know, like reading about it, or even knowing the history of it. And I think it's also a problem nowadays that people cannot make mistakes and learn from them, because if they make a mistake, they're directly bashed by everybody in the world. And I think that we need to find a solution for that, because nobody can really express how they feel, because they're really afraid of the backlash of it, or being in the wrong place. So even when I'm DJing, I find that a problem, that sometimes people come and ask me the weird, like, one time person came and asked me that, what is this word Palestine that you keep saying? And I was like, that is not a word, that's the country I'm from. And he's like, oh, really, where's that? And so his friends started laughing and making fun of him. And they're like, wait, you're serious? You don't know where Palestine is? And he's like, no. And I'm asking, and, you know, he felt weirded out. But I told them that I get this question so much, and they felt weird, but I do. And I explained to him where Palestine is. And, you know, and I think it's good to also let that be, and for people to actually speak about it. If you're not going to make a post about it and like make a public stand, at least, you know, you can share with friends, or at least, you know, just get into it, because the amount of people just say that they don't want to get into it is annoying, because they already judged before, but they don't want to get more into it. So it's like, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think big part of is at least getting to know a little bit more, and you know, share the light, and hopefully, I don't know, come visit, come party in Palestine, you know, like really get to know a little bit, because I don't know, I don't find that our job, or like the audience job, is to kind of be political or represent things politically, but the least they can do is to share that awareness, and to kind of, you know, see the similarities, and kind of to question things around. That is, I don't know, it's quite tough. I feel that we, as Sama was saying, we see people that oppose and people who politically represent themselves are being mashed. So in the same place, we do feel a little bit of that pressure. And that means that, even that we're free to express, and people who are in other countries are free to express their opinions, it's still in a way controlled, manipulated.
Yeah, it's definitely not free to express yourself, babe. I'm not free to express myself, and I'm Palestinian. Imagine if I'm not Palestinian and trying to say something about Palestinians. It is even double bash, like I am a Palestinian and I cannot talk about the struggle because then I'm attacking somebody else, but it's not that, I'm just talking about an experience that I had and an injustice that I see that, I feel like us as people need to address. And then you talk to other people about it and then they just look at you with, it's like, what? But you're talking about the gay rights, you're talking about the hunger in Yemen, and this is it's not, it's basic human rights issues. Like for now it is that, it's like, and I don't know, and a lot of people say that they want to help and they want to stand with, but they don't know what to do, like I just see a lot of advertisements for Tel Aviv in Israel, and we're not going to make advertisements for Palestine, like the Palestinian Authority is not gonna spend time to do that, it's not about advertising the place, it's about knowing the place and the people, and even without, it's just basic human rights, even if you don't get to know the people, some people getting injustice, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, they can support the artists, they can know a little bit more about the music scene, and of course, would be nice to build more bridges for us to kind of see what kind of collaborations we can do with other institutions or collectives around the world, which is something that we also look, very, very much towards.
I think the awareness. Sorry,
please continue.
No, just going off what they said, I think awareness is key. Being educating yourself. Maybe making connections to other, movements and seeing how all of this interconnects is also key. And of course, opportunities for collaboration, for, sharing and just trying to understand the context. I think that helps on its own. And I think a good example of that was DJs for Palestine, just because it raised awareness and then brought more attention on the issue of Palestine.
Yeah. Finally, I just say to anyone, if they can, come visit. The food is great. The scenery is great. It's not as it's depicted on the news. People are alive here. We are doing a lot. Freedom is not given to us. That's why we're taking it. We're doing our events. We're doing what we need to do. So come and experience that. I would say if it's possible right now, we can't make that happen. But there's also another way is to look at different organizations that are doing great work on the ground. And I highly recommend people looking up various organizations in Palestine that they can support if they can't come here, just to learn what they're doing.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, everyone. That was super insightful, and just really excited for your festival that will definitely happen at some point. So looking forward to that. But thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone at home for watching as well. You can keep an eye on J2v for more discussions and enjoy the rest of the festival.
სიცოცხლისთვის და სიკვდილისთვის, ბედნიერებასა და მწოხარებაში, მშვიდობასა და ომში, 1000 წლეულების წინ ანტიკური ქართველები ცეკვავდნენ ყველგან. ეს სინქრონული მოძრაობები მათი ცხოვრების ყოველდღიურობა და ურთიერთობის ენაა. ხორომი, ფერხული, სამაია, ისტორიული არტეფაქტები ქართული რიტუალების შესახებ გვიყვება და გვიღწევს, როგორც ცეკვავდნენ უძველესი ადამიანები ერთმანეთისთვის და ღმერთებისთვის. ცეკვავდნენ ერთად, ღეროდნენ ერთად. რიტუალში მონაწილეობას იღებდა ყველა სხეული, ყველა ხმა. ასე იქმნებოდა უნიკალური ქართული პოლიფონიური სიმღერა, მუსიკალური ჰარმონია ორგანიზებული ქაოსიდან. დასავლეთისა და აღმოსავლეთის, ქრისტიანული და მუსლიმური ცივილიზაციების გზაგასაყარზე მდებარეობამ ქვეყანას არაერთი ბრძოლა დაატეხა თავს, არაერთი დამპყრობელის კულტურული გავლენაც. ბოლო 100 წლეული ქვეყანამ საბჭოთა იზოლაციაში გაატარა. ჩაკეტილი კულტურა, დახვრეტილი თაობები, შიშები და პერიოდული დისიდენტური გაბრძოლებები თავისუფლებისთვის.
ქალაქ თბილისის დაგეგმარების და რეკონსტრუქციის საქმეში დიდი მუშაობა არის ჩატარებული.
ეკონომიკური კეთილდღეობის, ფუტურისტული თუ ბრუტალისტური არქიტექტურის კვალდაკვალ, რომელსაც საბჭოთა მოქალაქეებისთვის ძლიერი საიმედო მომავლის განცდა უნდა შეექმნა, ადამიანთა ხმები და სხეულები დიდ რეპრესიებსა და დიდ დეპრესიებში იკარგება. ოთხმოციანი წლების საქართველოში ეროვნულ-განმათავისუფლებელი მოძრაობა იწყება. საყოველთაო აჯანყებას სისტემის კოლაფსი მოსდევს. ქვეყანა იბრუნებს დამოუკიდებლობას.
შავი დღე დაუდგა საქართველოს. იმპერიულმა ძალებმა და მათმა აგენტურამ საქართველოში თავს მოგვახვიეს სამოქალაქო ომი.
ოთხმოცდაათიანი წლები საქართველოს შორს დგას ადრინდელი პოლიფონიური ჰარმონიისგან. აქ უკვე ყველა ხმა ერთმანეთის წინააღმდეგია.
გასიცინი რო იცინი შეგიძლია. დიხარია ქართველების დახოცვა. სამართლო ომი მოიგო. I'm happy on a happy day. I'm in the dance. Maggie, hey, give some pay. ომი, რომელსაც გამარჯვებული არ ჰყავდა, დასრულდა, მაგრამ ომი ისევ დაიწყო, ამჯერად აფხაზეთში. თავისუფლების გზაზე გაღებულ მსხვერპლთა რიცხვს 10,000-ობით დაღუპული და 100,000-ობით დევნილი შეემატა. ომში წასული ჯარისკაცები ისევ სიმღერით ერთიანდებიან და ამხნევებენ ერთმანეთს. ქვეყანაში ეკონომიკური კოლაფსი, სიღატაკე და შიმშილი მძვინვარებს, დაცარელებული დახლები უმძიმესი ეპოქის მანიშნებელია.
Ես пенсия 6 лар. Вот сегодня хлеб без 42. У меня нет, кто будет делать?
ადამიანები ფიზიკური გადარჩენისთვის იბრძვიან. შერი მოქალაქეები საკვების მოთხოვნით აქციებს მართავენ. ქუჩები სავსეა კრიმინალური დაჯგუფებებით, რომლებიც მზის შუქზე ძარცვავენ გაღატაკებულ ქალაქს. უმიზნო დარჩენილი თაობის დიდი ნაწილი ჰეროინის ერაში უჩინარდება. სრული კოლაფსის პარალელურად ქვეყანაში ახალი შემოქმედებითი კერები და არტისტული კოლექტივები ჩნდება. 90-იანი წლების ქართველი ხელოვანები პროტესტისას თვითგამოხატვის ახალ გზებს ეძებენ. იწყება ალტერნატიული ხელოვნების აღორძინება, რომელსაც 80-იანი წლების უძრაობის ხანაში ჩაეყარა საფუძველი. ძალადობრივ გარემოს კონტრკულტურა უპირისპირდება. ომის ნაცვლად ცეკვას უმღერიან მუსიკოსები. კულტურულ რევოლუციამდე ჯერ კიდევ ადრეა, თუმცა საპროტესტო ქორეოგრაფია ისევ იპყრობს ქუჩებს.
Make your fucking days. Make your fucking life. Dream yourself and dream now. Dance or die. Make your fucking days. Make your fucking life. Dream yourself and dream now. I said dance or die.
საერთო იდეისა და ერთმანეთის დობის გარეშე საკუთარ შიშებში ჩაკეტილი საზოგადოება რევოლუციაზე აწყობს და ცდილობს იპოვოს ახალი გზა.
ლოვანი ტოლერანტულობა წვიმანი დანაშაულის მიმართ. არანაირი პირობით საჯარო ყველა ციხეში.
ქვეყანაში ნულოვანი ტოლერანტობის პოლიტიკა ცხადდება, რასაც დაშინებული თაობა და გადავსებული საპატიმროები მოსდევს. რეპრესიული პოლიტიკის წინააღმდეგ უვადო აქციები იწყება, ირბევა აქციები. შემდეგ ისევ ომი იწყება. კიდევ ერთი ოკუპირებული ტერიტორია, საზოგადოება სოლიდარობის ცოცხალ ჯაჭვს ქმნის, მაგრამ წინააღმდეგობა ისევ ვრცელდება. სისტემური დანაშაულისა და პატიმართა მიმართ დამამცირებელი და არაადამიანური მოპყრობის გამო ქუჩები ხმაურით ივსება. კეთილდღეობა კვლავ პოლიტიკური და რელიგიური ისტაბლიშმენტის ექსკლუზივად რჩება, რომლების ძალაუფლების კიდევ უფრო გასაძლიერებლად საფრთხეს სახავენ თავისუფალ, კრიტიკულ აზრს. საფრთხეთ აღიქმება ყველა, ვინც არსებული ძალადობრივი სტატუს-კვოს შესაცვლელად გამოვა. მათი წაქეზებით კოლექტიური გონი იწყებს ბრძოლას თავისუფალი თვითგამოხატვის აღსაკვეთად. 7 მაისს ჰომოფობიის წინააღმდეგ ბრძოლის საერთაშორისო დღეს რამდენიმე ათეულქვიარ აქტივის 10,000-ობით მოქალაქე დაუპირისპირდა. ჩვენ თავისუფალი საქართველოს მოქალაქეები ვართ. მოძალა და ინსტიტუციების საძულველი თაობა. ყველა გარიყური ახალგაზრდა, ძალადობას გამოქცეული ქალები და კაცები, დიდრები და ღარიბები. ბედნიერების ძიებაში გეტოში დაკარგული ყველა მეოცნებე ხულიგანი. ჩვენ ამ ქვეყნის განდეგილი შვილები ვართ, რომლის ხმის გაგონებისაც ყველაზე მეტად ეშინოდა თავისუფლებით აშინებულ საზოგადოებას. ამიტომ გადავწყვეტეთ თუ არავის ესმოდა ჩვენი გვესმინა ერთმანეთისთვის, გვეცეკვა ერთმანეთისთვის და ერთმანეთის ღმერთებისთვის. ჩვენ მშვიდობისთვის დავთმეთ დღე და ქალაქს ღამით-შევესიეთ, როცა ომისგან, შრომისგან და გულგრილობისგან დაღლილ თანამოქალაქეებს უიმედოდ ეძინათ. ასე დაიბადა ბასიანი, დაუმორჩილებელი, უკომპრომისო მეომარი, რომელიც გაბრაზებული თვალებით უმზერს უსამართლობას. სახელი ისტორიულია, ქალი მეფის თამარის ტახტზე ყოფნის დროს გამარჯვებით დასრულებული ბრძოლის. მუზარადი უნიკალურია, აღმოსავლური და დასავლური სტილის შერწყმა სიმბოლურად ასახავს მათ გაერთიანებას ქართულ კულტურაში. შეკრების ადგილი დინამოს სტადიონის მიწისქვეშეთია, რომლის ტრიბუნებს ჯერ ანტიკური რომაული სვეტები ამაგრებდა, ხოლო მოგვიანებით საბჭოთა ბრუტალიზმში რეკონსტრუირებული უზარმაზარი ქვები. საფეხბურთო მინდორის სპორტული მასკულინობის სიმბოლო 90-იან წლებში არაერთხელ ყოფილა პოლიტიკური გამოსვლების, სამხედრო აღლუმებისა და ეროვნული მოძრაობების შეკრების ადგილი. მიწის ზემოთ მინდორზე, მოგვიანებით კი მიწისქვეშეთშიც ამ სტადიონს ყოველთვის ავსებდა ხმაური და პოლიტიკა. ბასიანის ღამე ბეტონის ბნელ დერეფნებში, განათებასა და ჩრდილებში, მუსიკასა და მარტოობაში ჩაკარგული მოცეკვავეების ღამეა. ქაოსის ცეკვა, სადაც თითოეული სხეული საკუთარ ისტორიას მოგვითხრობს. ყოველ დღე ამ სხეულებს სისტემა ხელიდან გვაცლის. ღამე ხშირად საცეკვაო მოედანზე იწყება და პოლიციის განყოფილებაში მთავრდება. ყველა ცეკვა ბოლო ცეკვას ჰგავს. სისტემის პოლიტიკური და კულტურული ძალადობრივი მარწუხები ქვეშ სხეულების დამონებასაც აქტიურად ცდილობს. მაგრამ სიძულვილის პასუხად ბასიანის საცეკვაო მოედანზე ქვიარების გაერთიანება იწყება. ამ ერთად ცეკვას ხორუმი ეწოდა, ომისა და გამარჯვების, ერთიანობით გამოწვეული დღესასწაულის უძველესი ქართული ცეკვის სახელი. ხორუმის საცეკვაო მოედანზე შავი დროშების ქვეშ ცეკვით მოყოლილი ისტორიები გაერთიანდა. ქაოსი პოლიფონიად იქცა. ერთად ცეკვა კი ჯგუფურ ამბოხად. კონტრასტი ბასიანის ღამესა და თბილისის დღეს შორის მძაფრია. ამ კონტრასტს თითოეული მოცეკვავე გრძნობს, როდესაც გამოდის კლუბიდან გარეთ, ღამიდან დღის სინათლეზე, ქუჩებში, სადაც ძალადობისა და უთანასწორობისგან დაღლილი ადამიანები აჩრდილებივით დააბიჯებენ. გამოსავალი ერთია. პროცესი კლუბიდან გარეთ უნდა გავრცელდეს, ღამიდან დღის სინათლეზე და მოედოს ქუჩებს.
მხოლოდ ერთი გადაწყვეტილება ჰუმანური ნარკოპოლიტიკისთვის ხალხთან ომი დასრულდეს! ხალხთან ომი დასრულდეს! ხალხთან ომი დასრულდეს!
გულწრფელი ენერგია და საპროტესტო ქორეოგრაფია ქუჩებს ისევ იპყრობს. ხმები გარდაუვალ წინააღმდეგობაზე მეგობრებიდან მეგობრებში ვრცელდება. საზოგადოება საერთოდ კივილის, სოციალური უთანასწორობისა და ჩაგვრის წინააღმდეგ ერთიანდება. ყველა მოძრაობის ავანგარდში მოცეკვავეები იდგნენ. ძალადობრივი სისტემისთვის თავისუფლება საფრთხეა. მიამბოხეს სხეულები მთავარი მოწინააღმდეგე. დაუმორჩილებელი ინდივიდების დამორჩილება მთავარი ამოცანა. თბილისში უეცრად ახალი ნარკოტიკული ნივთიერება ჩნდება, რომელსაც ახალგაზრდა ადამიანების სიცოცხლე ეწირება. ქალაქი პანიკა მოიცვა. წინასწარ განგაშისარებს გულგრელი ხელისუფლება გაუგებარი მიზეზებით არ პასუხობს. ტრაგიკულ მოვლენებზე პასუხისგებლობას ბასიანს აკისრებენ და კლუბის წინააღმდეგ აგორებული საეჭვო ცილისწამებლური კამპანია აქტიურ ფაზაში შედის.
აი სიკვდილის ალაყაფი. სადაც გვიხოცავენ შვილებს.
ღამის კლუბი ბასიანი. 15 ახალგაზრდა დაღუპული ბოლო პერიოდში. რამდენიმე სპანაშვიდი ეხლაც მიმდინარეობს. 24 საათში დააპატიმრონ კლუბის მეპატრონეები, დაიწყოს საგამოძიებო მოქმედებები და დაილუქოს ეს ახალგაზრდობის სახოცი დაწესებულება.
ნათელია, რომ ხელისუფლება წინააღმდეგობრივი მოძრაობების შეჩერებას აპირებს და თავისუფალ სხეულებზე გამარჯვების იმედით სპეცრაზმით არბევს ბასიანს. უმოწყალოდ სცემენ და აპატიმრებენ ასობით ადამიანს, მათ შორის კლუბის დამფუძნებლებს. წინააღმდეგობა იმავე ღამეს იკრებს ძალას. კლუბის წინ შეკრებილი ასობით ახალგაზრდის მრისხანება მეორე დღეს პარლამენტის წინ ქალაქის მთავარ ქუჩაზე 10,000-იან საპროტესტო რეილად იქცა. სიძულვილის ჩაკეტილი წრე გაიღო. ქუჩა, რომელიც 10 წლეულების წინ სამოქალაქო სისხლეწუხებისა და ომების ეპიცენტრი იყო, სოლიდარობის ცეკვით დაიკავეს მეამბოხეებმა. დათო ცეკვა ჭეშმარიტია, ის აუცილებლად რევოლუციით თავდება. მუსიკასა და საკუთარ თავთან განმარტოებული ღამის აჩრდილების ცეკვა მზის შუქზე რევოლუციად იქცა. ცეკვით ნათქვამი სოლიდარობის მანიფესტი დასრულდა. მაგრამ რევოლუცია ადამიანთა გონებაში ისევ აღრძელებს სიცოცხლეს. დროებით ისევ მიწის ქვეშ ჩადიან მეამბოხე სულები. მაგრამ როდემდე გაგრძელდება თეთრად გათენებული ღამეები. როდის ამოვა მზე მიწის ქვეშეთში. და რა მოხდება, როდესაც სიბნელეში ჩაკარგული ღამის დარაჯები დაუმორჩილებელი სხეულებით კვლავ გამოჩნდებიან დღის სინათლეზე.
Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shakira Payne. I head up the comms for Sonos in the UK, and I will be moderating the Junction 2 panel discussion today, which is called Deeds Not Words, the future of diversity in London's electronic music industry. So what does the future of diversity look like? Diversity should mean more perspectives, more debates, better decision makings that actually lead to better business practices, more innovation, and improved risk taking. In the last month, we've seen the world raise their voices and mobilize against the injustices and inequalities experienced by Black and ethnic communities. We've also seen corporations and industries respond with varying degrees of support. And we've seen opinions shared on whether campaigns such as Blackouts Tuesday or Let the Music Play were effective or performative. As the music industry reflects on the status quo, we can debate the dividing nuances, but for today's conversation, I'd really like us to talk about the active steps companies and individuals can take to move things forward. First, it's really about accepting the responsibility of creating a truly diverse and thriving environment, implementing better solutions and better practices in the short and long term. Positive behaviours at leadership levels allow us to unlock the differences we identify and implement beneficial changes. However, if you do exist in a homogenised command and control culture, it might be too risky for you to, or for others to speak up. So what can we do to change the environments that perpetuate insidious, systemic discrimination and unconscious biases? New research makes it increasingly clear that companies with more diverse workforces perform better financially, unlock innovation, and drive growth. Yet we have to acknowledge the duplexity in the music industry and that ethnic and cultural diversity on executive teams are actually quite low. In the United Kingdom, the disparity is quite significant. For example, stats taken from a research report highlights that the UK, 22% of university students that actually identify as Black and ethnic minority, we only see 8% of those minorities in executive roles in the UK. This just confirms that there is still much work for us to do, which nicely leads me introducing our panelists today. I'd like to introduce Dujon Fairweather. He's the head of press at Listen Up. He manages a roster of clients including Black Coffee, DJ EZ, Wiley, Doja Cat, Jamie Jones, and the Martinez Brothers, to name just a few. We've also got Fahana Abu. She's head of marketing at AEI. She boasts an impeccable track record with internationally renowned brands and currently leads the marketing strategies for all AEI music releases. And we also have Emily Gale. She's the head of press at Triple Threat Management. Emily has worked on campaigns for a broad range of artists, including Quartet, Double DE, Chase Status, and more, and also manages producers and artists, including Object Blue, LCY, and Harvey. Just like to say thank you all for taking the time today to speak with us. I'm really looking forward to hearing your views and experiences on today's topic. So let's start with a few questions to the panel. So this is a bit of an open question to all of you, and take your time to answer, but how important is diversity and inclusion to you, and what values does it bring?
I mean, I'll go first. I think personally, in relation to music, I think it's vitally important just to have different voices in the room from, not just racial diversity, but to provide different avenues, different angles and ways to look at things. I think, specifically with racial diversity and electronic music, it's about that connection with its core, about its connections with its roots. I think that's where it's most important, is that you have people that truly represent the values of the music and the values of the scene, and the people that help to build the scene and that culture. I think without that, there's things that can be missed and things that have led us to, probably the situation that we're in now.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. From a personal point of view as well, having equal representation for everyone is important. And definitely in dance music, a lot of what we do is the roots are Black music, and not having that represented within the, you know, organizations and things like that does lead to things being missed. And, you know, putting my hand up, like at our company, things have happened, and, you know, having those different viewpoints and spotting things that might not be quite right or might come across as not right would have been, you know, avoided. So I think having all those different viewpoints is very important.
Yeah, I mean, for me and for my business as well, like it's incredibly important, not just with the artists that we work with, but how we're looking to grow and expand our business as well. For the things that you brought up in your kind of introduction to the background of this whole chat, like the numbers are showing like diversity does like help increase like profit in a business as well. Like there's no reason why that you should just have one homogenous group of people looking after a business in any industry, and music is no different, especially as so much of this industry does profit off of Black music and other marginalized communities as well. So yeah, it's extremely valuable.
This is another question that's probably more directed to Farhana and Dujon, and it's really looking at basically, as you know, ethnic minority professionals in leadership roles yourselves, like what barriers have you seen in your career and within the music industry where you see limitations with executives that have the power to kind of make change, but, you know, having the ability to recognize the broad range of diversity that actually exists? You know, have you seen any barriers that may have limited their understanding of actually really broadening their views on kind of like having diversity within the company?
I mean, I don't know that I can pinpoint specifically, you know, a moment or specific executives in my pathway. I think something that's come up over time has been stuff like unpaid internships and the effect that has on who can therefore afford to sort of get their foot in the door, who can afford to, you know, effectively work for free or for travel and, you know, food money. And therefore, you know, you start to see people from more affluent backgrounds who obviously are generally, you know, more likely to be white, have a head start effectively. And you're finding that therefore it's more of a barrier, I guess, for people from inner city areas and people that have less financial stability. The only other thing I would say is, you know, and that's an industry-wide thing, you know, and that's creative industry-wide. That's not just music. The other thing I would say is this sort of it all kind of feeds into itself. The lack of representation at executive level means that there's a lack of understanding about Black people generally, you know, and there's a thing about, you know, potentially having to tiptoe and not be 100% yourself so that you fit into the mold of what you know, a worker should be in a professional environment. And I think, you know, I've been fortunate enough that my educational background means I'm very comfortable in white surroundings effectively. And not everybody has that, you know what I'm saying? So some people will be their full self. Some people might be boisterous, loud. Some people, you know, have typical traits that may make white executives shy away from them. They may see it as arrogant, or they may, you know, they can read things the wrong way, you know, or even calling things out. You know, previously we're in a time now where we're accepting people being called out for mispractice. But, you know, we know over the last 20, 25 years, if you were a Black professional and you went and said, you know, I think this is wrong because because of racial reasons, you very easily would be throwing the race card, or you know, you've got a chip on your shoulder, or any things that then you get sort of pigeonholed as a problem effectively, rather than someone to be championed for what you can bring to the table. So yeah, I think those would be the two things that I probably noticed, but those are, you know, less specific, you know, overt racism, and more sort of behind the scenes things.
Well, I guess they're subtleties, right? Like the perception of someone from a Black community, the way they speak, dress, and their kind of outlook on life doesn't necessarily fit within the constructs of, you say, the professional, predominantly white working space, and actually that's where the cultural differences come into play, right? Doesn't mean that they're less qualified or capable or intelligent, but you kind of need to get past these unconscious biases and these preconceptions that because of the way you look, therefore you may be seen troublesome. So it's also, you know, you kind of, there is these invisible lines, if you will, that actually those conscious, that there needs to be a raising consciousness to kind of start, the individuals need to start breaking that down themselves before the companies and the industry can kind of play into better practices, right?
Yeah, in essence.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's complex, right?
Yeah, no, it is. And I think, you know, it comes from the top down, and obviously it's something that everybody needs to be aware of, and everybody needs to buy into, like over a extended period of time for it to actually make a difference. Obviously, we're having these conversations now, but we have to actually see it be implemented. We actually have to see people trust, you know, their Black members of staff with more responsibility. We have to see, you know, it's going to be something that needs to be implemented across all companies with all people and be taken seriously for it to actually have a long-term effect.
Absolutely. And it would be great to hear some of your views, Farhana, as an Indian woman that's in a leadership role. You know, so predominantly in the music industry as well, it is quite male dominated, and actually successful women in industry kind of have to play a little bit harder to kind of be taken seriously. So actually from your, it'd be interesting to hear your perspectives.
Yeah, I guess one of the things is it's not a priority, or it hasn't felt like a priority to think, oh, right, you know, we need to champion other people. So a lot of people just naturally kind of want to sort of groom or help build up people that are similar to them. So just being overlooked just because you're not the same as someone. So, you know, you might not be the person that wants to go to the pub all the time, or, you know, people might have kids and want to go home, or you know, the unconscious bias definitely plays into it. I mean, I personally have never thought about it, and it hasn't really affected me. But I think looking back now, also having mentors or similar things, like someone who helps you, shows you the way, or so if there isn't enough people up there in leadership roles, they're not going to champion people where it doesn't feel like they have people of color or women or whatever it is. So you kind of have to always be fighting that little extra bit harder. So I think having diversity as a priority at leadership level, I think that would be something that would be a lot more helpful and useful.
And you mentioned like mentorship, which I think is incredibly important in the workspace, but did any of you guys have like anyone that you look to as a mentor or as an ally within the industry that either you identified with on a racial or cultural level, or someone that was actually white? You know, did you have allies that actually helped you in your career?
Yeah, I did. It was more people that I knew. I mean, not necessarily helped me, people that advised me, people that introduced me to people, you know, that sort of, as we know, half of this industry is kind of who you know, not necessarily who you know. So I think those people were massively important in, you know, connecting me with the right people and telling me about the right opportunities, which I think is, you know, is massively important. Even my knowledge of the fact that PR was a viable job role in music down to somebody else telling me about it. It wasn't like I wasn't walking around going, I want to work in PR 5 years ago. I didn't even really, do you know what I mean? I knew I wanted to work in music, and I was asking friends of mine that I trusted and knew and said, you know, do you know of anything going? And they were like, oh, I think you'd actually be quite good at this. So, you know, it's about having that network, and it's about us helping people from those backgrounds gain that network, and gain a proper understanding of the jobs available to them outside of, you know, the obvious, you know, being the artist themselves.
Absolutely, I would 100% agree with that. So, I mean, would you say there are music industry standards of diversity that are already in place that we can build on, or are we starting from the ground up? You know, can you tell us whether your company is having internal conversations about the lack of diversity, or do you already have systems in place that mitigates falling into these systemic patterns?
I think at the moment, it seems like there's been a very checkbox kind of way of monitoring diversity and inclusion. So I think we kind of need to build on from that. So it's a bit more active, actually a lot more active in making sure that people, you know, there is a lot more diversity and inclusion. We're going out there and really helping people make it a bit more of a level playing field. What was the second part to that question?
Like, again, do you know, in terms of like, you know, the current climate of things, like, is there something already in place within your company, or are you having more active discussions as opposed to having things already in place?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely taken this up a level. It's been something that we've talked about for a while, but it's really kind of geared up now, and we're like seriously put into place different sort of procedures, whether it's like a diversity and inclusion like project team. So we're looking at how we can educate the team on all the different issues surrounding it, looking at training, doing the unconscious bias test, and also with recruitment, like really expanding out on how we can just by putting a job out and not getting enough applications from people of like a diverse background doesn't mean it's good enough. So really looking out there to see who we can partner with, not just relying on the same old people coming through. And then also on the music side, how we can expand the artists that we're supporting and how we go about doing that. So it's kind of like a long-term plan, but one where we don't just forget about it. It's like now part of the company's goals to make sure that we are actively and proactively doing this.
So is the recent kind of what's been happening in the news in the world been more of a catalyst to kind of seriously look at this, or have there been discussions in the past that may have been met with resistance, or it's just been like you say, ticking a box as like, yeah, we're playing our part, but actually there's an impetus now to be, like you say, much more action to bias, actually implementing something more meaningful?
Like, it was something that we've been talking about, and initially I guess the first step was when I joined the company, there was like, I think there was about 12-15 people on the team, and I was one of like maybe 2 or 3 women. So we've kind of improved on that. However, in terms of racial diversity and, you know, social class and things like that, so many different levels, that there's a lot more to be done, and it was all part of the plan, but going a bit slower than it is now. Basically, this has definitely helped speed up the progress and really make it a top priority.
Right. Emily?
Yeah. I'd be happy to chime in here. So I think for us, like in terms, like we're very, like, not many people might not know about us, but we're a very small business. There's only 4 of us in the senior team, and then social media and touring support as well. So we're not on a massive scale yet. We're a couple years old. But us, like, diversity had always been something that was in the backs of our minds, but as kind of like a young growing business, it's not something that we had that we admittedly we had at the forefront. Is something that we're going to be really active in what we're doing. So in terms of like events of recent months with Black Lives Matter being a catalyst, like, yeah, that has been a catalyst for people like us who have always cared passionately about equality and supporting marginalized voices. And I mean, you can even look at our roster to see the diverse acts that we work with, but now really we want to kind of overcome that initial, well, what can we do to make a difference? And be like, well, it doesn't matter if there's only 4 or 5 of us in this company, of course we can make a difference. So for us, internally, that started by us like looking at our business and saying, right, obviously, like we've kind of, Farhana touched on about the artists we represent, like we're pretty proud to represent quite a diverse range of artists, from like Black, Brown, LGBTQ+, female, non-binary as well. It's pretty diverse, but what else can we be doing internally and also moving forwards as a company and growing in that way? One of the things that we have really discussed in terms of like policies to sort of like mitigate falling back into old habits was basically starting an industry roundtable for small dynamic businesses such as ours, and Dujon's and Farhana's as well on this call, and having everybody join in collaboratively, whether that it's kind of like an early idea right now, but at least a quarterly meeting, whether in person or online, where people can come together, share best practices in terms of the way that their business is approaching it. So then that will basically, it is sort of like a transfer of knowledge and ideas, and making sure that everybody is doing the right things and feeling supported, and know that there's no wrong answers here, right? Just making sure that there is like a very large sort of bedrock that is gonna force through change. I just think like it's no good individual companies sort of saying like, well, what are we gonna do? How can we change it? And I really believe like the power of collaboration here is really important for long-term change. So that's one of the things that we started implementing.
I mean, that sounds like a great first step to really coming together, because obviously you've got the music industry as a whole, but like you say, you've got the different variant kind of levels of companies. You've got the small startup independents that are probably a bit more forward thinking, more agile to kind of adapt to this new way of hiring practices, for example, looking how they work with artists. And I guess the beauty of being a smaller company is that actually you can set a new precedence, right? Whereas bigger companies are much more cumbersome. They're slower to move to change, right? So I think it's quite exciting to be part of a movement where actually you can be pioneering, implementing better practices, rather than looking to the big dogs, if you will, to kind of set the standards. Actually, you guys can create your own new story, right? Which is actually quite exciting. I think, you know, there needs to be more communities within industries that actually come together, as opposed to, you know, obviously there's healthy competition with businesses, but at the same time, when it comes to really making sure that, I guess, there is that self-regulation within your own industry, is quite important, right? Because you guys can set the standards in terms of best practices, how, you know, especially those that identify as ethnic minorities, actually making sure that you're a voice in the room, especially in the executive leadership roles, you know, influencing those new pathways to connecting to underrepresented communities. Like, you guys have an opportunity to really play a large part in that, and which is quite exciting, I think. Talking, right? Whereas before it was just a thing that, you know, kind of, we'll deal with it, but you know, the wheel keeps turning. You know, we need to kind of do our day-to-day jobs, but now is the time to actually reflect and think about more meaningful ways to really kind of push the dial forward.
Totally. And I think what's really important about approaching it this way is like a level of accountability. It's all well and good everybody saying, I pledge to do this, I'm going to do that, we will do X, Y, Z. But I think by like sharing what you're doing internally with your peers and like removing that level of competition and secrecy, there is some level of that in the industry. You're all just like working towards a common goal and making sure that, like, yeah, you are held accountable. You're putting up your hand and saying, I've done this wrong, and also showing that you're willing to learn. I think, I don't know if I've said this already, I feel like I've said it quite a few times in the past couple of weeks. Like, it doesn't matter if you're late to the party, as long as you're here now and showing up and willing to learn and be told you might be wrong and do better. And I think that's what's really important, and making sure that there's no fear for other companies, small, medium or large, who haven't done anything like this before but want to, and know that it's never too late to start making those steps to make sure diversity and inclusion is a priority.
Absolutely. So how is communication with the company when building a case or strategy for developing a formal diversity and inclusion program? Because I guess, you know, there's always been a little bit of trepidation to talk about race and diversity because people feel a little bit uncomfortable, not sure how to approach it. But I think it's really important to be having an open dialogue. And you know, how do you guys feel about that within your own personal views, but also within the structure and culture of your own companies?
Oh yeah, you go. I feel like that.
I mean, I think it's I'm in a unique position in the sense that I'm in the senior management team, and obviously I'm a person of color. So I think, you know, we have always had not a great representation, but never had none. And I've always sort of felt empowered. I've never felt like I couldn't say I was uncomfortable with something. So I think, you know, for us personally, I would say generally, it's about honesty. I think it's about honesty. It's about empowering the people within your business, you know, from any sort of marginalized group, to feel like they can come forward and speak their truth, and that you will, you know, take it on board, and that you will act accordingly. I think, you know, we currently have a weekly meeting since that Blackout Tuesday event, where we discuss what we're going to do moving forward, you know, anything that we think is of relevance. And that sort of company wide, everybody's encouraged to take part. Obviously, some people won't make every meeting, and everybody has a voice, you know, and it's not something that's kind of like the owners are kind of controlling or running. It's being run by all of us, you know, regardless of whether you're an intern or what. If you have a relevant point to make, then it will be taken on board. So I think, you know, communication, and I think listening to those who have the experience, you know, as people of color, you know, like I say, we're in a unique position whereby the accountability is coming from within. I feel very comfortable, you know, calling things out if need be. You know what I'm saying? And there's other members of staff who are Black as well in our office in LA and in our office here who would feel equally as comfortable. So, you know, if anybody is doing anything that we don't feel is right, or, you know, in line with the values that we should represent, then we will say something, and we'll do what we can to change it. So I think that, you know, that's the best way possible. If there are no Black members of staff, then obviously it's about education. It's about reading. It's about about educating and reading, and maybe asking people for help, asking people for advice on, you know, how best to implement things, or how best to look at things. I think there's been a lot of stuff recently about, you know, white people need to educate themselves more and things like that. But obviously, as we know, in the music industry, by and large, white people are the gatekeepers. So they need to, but also, you know, they need to ask for help as to how to implement these things. Because I think if it's just left to them, it's like, well, research and, you know, posts and things like that. But what are they actually changing? And, you know, I'm happy for people to come to the party late, but what are you going to do to potentially make up for the years of, you know, systemic indifference that you've created and the people that you've set back? Because, you know, if you've got a head start as a massive company, then how are you going to try and help uplift, you know, smaller companies or smaller DJs or whatever it is? So I think, yeah.
So does that come into like the values of a company, right? So actually having, if you, even as a small company, right, like, would it help to absolutely have an open dialogue and transparency and being able to have, you know, some awkward and difficult conversations? But is it easier to implement actual simple, strong values that everyone kind of has to adhere to, in terms of like, we won't tolerate this and this is what we kind of live by in terms of everything? And I can say that in my own company, we have like 5 values which we live by, and actually it permeates through everything, just how you communicate with your colleagues, how you look at a campaign, how we show up outside of the company, you know. So it's sometimes actually, because at first I was a bit like, I'm not sure about this, but actually it's easy to kind of live by simple values, which doesn't feel like you're joining some kind of cult, but actually that follows out through just you being a good person, you know?
Yeah, completely. But yeah, I think it's weird because smaller businesses could probably benefit from that because it's not something that they necessarily think of. But then on the flip side, I would guarantee you almost every major label and huge corporation has those values in place and has done absolutely nothing about actually increasing representation or bridging that gap. So, you know, you can have slogans and you can have these kinds of things, you know, written into your contracts or, you know, as these buzzwords, but a lot of it's just corporate jargon. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that in your instance. I'm not saying that in your instance at all. I'm just saying there might be some places whereby they have these things in place, but when you actually look at the, you know, it's like the difference between theory and practice. In theory, this is what we want.
Absolutely.
In practice, well, where are all of these underrepresented people that you're championing? You know, why do all your lineups look the same?
Well,
you know, so all of these things, I think actually people have had a lot of those things in place for a while, and actually we haven't seen any change. I think now is that people are like, we need to see change. You know, I don't even care about slogans. If slogans don't come to an end result, then bun it. I'm not bothered. Like if you're making a change, I'm not cussing Sonos. I'm just.
No. I'm not saying, it's like, it goes back to what Farhana was saying, right? In terms of ticking a box, like diversity inclusion is not new.
Yeah, no,
right?
Yeah.
You know, you know, it's not new, and there's a lot of companies that don't have diversity inclusion as part of their policy. Like, it's not surprising. So companies that do, it is up to individuals and executives. It has to be from the top down. If you've got an executive that comes from a more Eurocentric, patriarchal point of view, and they've risen to the top because of their privilege, it's not on their top list to kind of implement these values, right? So ultimately it comes from individuals. And if you are building a foundation as a company, I believe that if you're going to set values within your company, there should be integrity to that. Yeah. So I think we all have a responsibility to implement those things if that's what we believe, and if we don't, then you know, then that's a different conversation. But the whole point is that we shouldn't really dismiss it. I think we should all be held accountable that if we are going to have diversity inclusion as part of our policies, and we are going to start implementing practices and you know, biases to action in the short term, then we need to hold ourselves accountable to it, and we need to hold our employees accountable to it, and that's constantly sense checking ourselves. Not, hey, we've written this great strategy, we've ticked the box. Yeah. We'll run one survey a year and see how many, you know, women have we got, how many, you know, BAME have we got. That's bullshit. I'm just calling it out now. Yeah. We need to look harder at ourselves to really go, what are we doing that's actually meaningful? What can we do in the short term? You know, and it goes back to what ways can companies proactively and creatively recruit candidates from underrepresented communities? Like, genuinely put in programs that create a pathway that, whether it's mentorship or, you know, kind of seminars or programs or whatever, like what you know, have you guys thought of anything like that could be put into place that actually you could implement in the short term? Because that's something that's actually meaningful and connecting you to communities that may not otherwise have access.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've been looking at for a while on all levels. For example, we've kind of partnered with different people, you know, Talyard Education, Wisdom, who runs that, and we've been working with him. They have so much talent coming through, whether they're ready to go in or whether they need work experience or whatever it may be. We kind of like try and work with a lot more people to kind of diversify where we're getting the talent pools coming from. We're based in Haggerston, and you know, you've got the Beauvoir estate. There's the crib that does youth work, and so connecting with people there and trying to work out what the best way is to get more people coming through. Like, you know, AEI as a business, you might know the brands that we kind of run and operate, but not know AEI as a business and why it doesn't appeal to more people. So it's kind of trying to find that. Also, when we put jobs out before, it was, you know, put it on Music Business Worldwide or Music Week or wherever, but that's not enough. So whether it's we're part of like women in music groups, or, you know, looking at other organizations or recruitment companies that are like actually actively bringing us candidates from different backgrounds, we basically said that we want to make sure at least we're getting a diverse range of candidates coming in, and then also looking at, you know, potentially, well, not potentially, we will be removing like name, gender, date of birth, all of those kinds of things, to then just assess the candidates based on what their qualifications or experience is. So we are like actively trying. So we, you know, recruiting for a senior developer, and you know, you never get any women coming through. So we're like, there must be women or even people of color out there that want to do these roles. So we won't like start recruiting until we've got a different. Not start recruiting. We won't recruit until we've got enough variety in the applications. Yeah.
I think that's a really important aspect that in terms of like exactly that, like not consider recruiting until you actually have a fair kind of roster of applicants, really, because I think quite often it is, especially when you're a smaller company, it's easier to kind of just work within your pool. And, you know, going back to what Dujon was saying, it's like, it's very much about who you know. So if you're in the know, then cool, you've kind of got options potentially. But if you're not in the know and you're someone that actually would want to consider you know, a career in the music industry, but you don't know that there's these job roles going, then it makes it quite, there's no bridge. So it's really about creating these bridges, and actually, yeah, I think that's kind of probably maybe what's lacking. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of groups and communities in the industry today that wasn't there when I was younger. But like, I don't know how interconnected, I guess, the industry is to those. Like, are you guys already part of the, you know, like you mentioned, obviously these other organizations, but is this something that you're going to proactively look at?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I kind of ask people I know, and I'll be recommended, like, you know, like the other box, and she said so, and lots of other things. So it's just kind of making those connections. It'd be great if it was like one directory where everything was in one place, so you could easily go and find them. But yeah, actively just looking for them myself, and our team. So that's the only way I know at the moment. So maybe I will start a directory of it.
Something to think about.
I've been saying to people over the last 2 weeks that I feel like, not 2 weeks, however long we've been having this discussion, I feel like there needs to be like a she said so type entity for racial representation. I think it would be an important thing to have, because I think that, you know, I think that the thing with racial representation in dance music, a big part of it is the disconnect between the Black community and electronic music, and the disconnect between the origins of electronic music being Black, Latino, queer, trans, and where we are now, where it's very white, male dominant. Specifically speaking from the position of a young Black man growing up, I had no affinity with dance music. There was nothing in my ends that made me feel like that was a music that I should connect with, that I had any sort of, you know, connection to. So I think there's been this systemic, whether purposeful or not, a systemic erasure of Blackness, of its Black roots in electronic music, you know, over the last 20, 25 years, or however long. I'm quoting random numbers, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that means that when you have kids growing up, they're not thinking about that music as a viable option. They're not even, you know, I thought dance music was Kevin and Perry Go Large. You know what I'm saying? Like I honestly did. Like it wasn't until I went to uni that it opened my eyes up to it. And even then I had to do the digging, because it opened my eyes up to was Mr. C, you know, Richie Horton, Sven, but it wasn't, I didn't see Black faces in dance music until I started doing the digging. And then there was, you know, there has been a sort of comeback for those, you know, the Moody Mans and the Detroit originators and the Chicago originators to an extent. But when you see Black faces on dance music lineups, if you're talking about stage representation, because that is also a problem, as well as, you know, our role. When you see Black people on lineups in house and techno specifically, it's the OGs. It's only ever people that are 40, 50 plus, really. You know, you don't see a huge amount of young Black artists. Same thing in drum and bass. So, you know, there has to be the industry, us in the industry, have to help connect those dots and help to find a way to make the youths connect with the music again.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, in terms of like, it's a funny one. That's why I say, like, with music, it's kind of like you've got this duality, because you've got the music industry that is thriving, obviously, from Black culture, but at the same time, it's kind of siloed, isn't it? You know, like for me, I actually came from drum and bass that then led me to house music, which is quite a long, winding road. But it is interesting, I think, that in terms of the celebration of actual Black artists within these kind of subcultures, if you will, on dance music, definitely, you know, they're there, but like you say, in terms of them being connected to the Black communities or young people within the underrepresented, there's this cultural divide where that's not for me, or that's white people's music, and actually there's a lack of understanding that it's actually quite multinational, really, in terms of like how they've influenced music and they're successful. But I guess it's, again, bringing those bridges together, and like you say, creating a space where actually they're celebrating and then educating them and bringing them in a space where they're aware of it, which probably quite often, if you are locked into one genre of music, quite often when you're young, you're not necessarily open to exploring other music, because it means moving into a completely different culture of that, like, you know, going to Ibiza or, you know, going to festivals, which you're starting to see that crossover, you know, with you know, like Wireless, for example, is a music festival which suddenly going outside and having tents, it's a slow progression to kind of then going to weekend festivals and then, you know, discovering other tents with different music. It's a, you know, it can be a fast projection for some people. For others, it can be slow, because people are afraid, they feel like they don't belong, even though, you know, music at the same time brings a lot of people together, you know, in terms of, if you think about dance music in itself, you know, drum and bass, dance music, acid house, it was the first time that you brought multiple cultures together, which completely broke down, you know, kind of racial barriers and cultures. And so it plays a huge part, but at the same time, not many people understand the origins of where dance music came from, like you say, and the political role that it played and the cultural shift that it kind of instigated. So I think that needs to be celebrated more so.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, a company that's got like Drum and Bass Arena and UKF and such, like, you know, huge sort of portal for putting drum and bass and all of that music out is something that we're like really looking into, like how we can kind of get more people, more artists that aren't the, you know, from the main labels or whatever it is, and really looking at how we can do that, whether it's like, you know, looking at multiple sources of A&R, so they're not just coming from the same pool of people. So these are like the active conversations that we're having, and like really looking to see how we can expand that out. So not just the YouTube uploads, the artists that we're supporting, whether we need to, you know, maybe we need to connect them with other labels that they might do better on. So I don't have the answers yet, but we're working on it.
I think like even on a PR level, in terms of the way in which like we're promoting artists and working with publications, it's like there's clearly, it's no denying, there's a massive disconnect between the history of dance music, electronic music, and its origins, with, I guess, the fans who are digesting that. So I think it's our role as publicists to help tell those stories and like hold editors to account, basically, if we don't feel like that's being told properly, and making sure that there is diversity of like artists that are going to be interviewed and shot for these magazines as well, and saying like, no, like this isn't okay, actually maybe you should try this artist instead. And then that's something that's ongoing in the press department here already. We've already turned down features and said, this isn't quite right, you should probably speak to this artist instead. If it's a position where an editor's commissioned a journalist to write about a specific artist in electronic music, well, I'd say, well, no, maybe this isn't the right journalist, you should try some of these freelancers out there. There's loads of amazing Black freelance at the moment that would be much better equipped to tell that story. So I think it's like collectively all working together to help have these stories told more authentically and more factually as well, to make sure that that representation there in terms of like the promo is happening at that level as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And I think also on that point, there's, you know, we've spoken about our own companies, but there's representation issues at most of, you know, the mainstream magazines as well that they obviously need to address, either by hiring, like you say, more freelancers, you know, of color, or, you know, having people more inside the building of color that will help, you know, affect representation. But, you know, a lot of the time also what, you know, this erasure's come about through the commercialization of the music and who, you know, who they feel serves best to grow an audience. Growing an audience means profit. You know, the more hits that you get means that you can charge more for advertising money, and it becomes a whole different entity rather than just, you know, necessarily covering what you like.
That's why I think even like Bandcamp, like they don't use any algorithms to force any form of discovery. It's really organic and like basically just it's artist to fan engagement there, whether it's through social media channels. And I think if more, I mean, obviously we live in a post-Facebook world now where algorithm is like the word on everybody's lips when it comes to making sure that your content's seen. But I think if more people approached, the way in which that they were selling music or choosing how to get, like you say, sell advertising space on their magazine and looking less at the numbers and kind of eliminating that for a bit and actually looking more at it more humanly and story-led and representation-led, then that would eventually have a positive effect in terms of anything more digitally and algorithmic, I think, anyway. And I think Bandcamp's a prime example of that. The amount of money that's getting put in artists' pockets from all backgrounds is absolutely incredible, and that has not been led through like certain playlisting or this is reacting, so this is happening. It's just really organic, and yeah, I think that's important.
I think I think Bandcamp are doing incredibly well in terms of like really shifting the dial and actually putting their money where their mouth is, literally, in supporting independent artists. I think it's amazing what they're doing. I'm just like, wow, this is really exciting, to be honest, because they're just like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're getting, holding themselves accountable to their own values, which I think is more of that's actually needed. But I'm going to close this out with the last question. So obviously this work is ongoing, and we are where we are right now. Obviously it's not perfect, but there's good intention to do more. How can, you know, what are your thoughts on how the majority, and if you think about our white allies, how can they support the minority in a more meaningful way moving forward? And you don't have to have the answers, it's just
I mean, listening and sort of championing people, you know, of people of color in positions of power effectively, so that the decision-making process is more collaborative and is more representative of you know, the world that we live in and of the scene that we love, really. You know, just, you know, the more people of color that inhabit those positions and that have a say in those positions, the better the industry will be for it, because you know, you'll start to see a difference in the way that campaigns are read, a difference in the difference in creativity. You know, there's all kinds of things that I think there's always been a status quo, I guess, and you know, if this didn't happen in this period of time, it never would have happened, because we've all been forced to stop and actually look at ourselves. So we've had no choice but to, you know, okay, well, actually, are we doing things right? You know, when you're just relentlessly pursuing profit and money, which is what businesses do as standard, you know, you don't really think about the who's, the what's, the whys. It's just like, you know, let's get it done. So I think now that we have had this reset and we have had the chance to look inwardly, you know, white people in positions of power have to look at how they can change things, and they have to, you know, listen and empower people of color, you know, around them to help create that change.
Right.
Yeah, I think for, like, I will speak for all white people right now, is listening, but not putting pressure on Black and brown voices to provide you with that information. Go and educate yourself, and educate your friends, your family, the people you work with, and don't be afraid to have difficult, uncomfortable conversations and call people out, basically. And like further to that as well, like the other point that I made earlier about being accountable, I think that's really important now. Like the way in which like we as the majority can help minorities in a meaningful way is by saying we are going to do these things and we're going to tell you we're going to do them, and we are going to hold ourselves accountable by doing so publicly, and you can as well, and watch us make this change. There's no more hiding behind, like you say, meaningless slogans. And I think it's that.
Yeah, I would just say don't get complacent and actively make changes rather than going, this is what we're going to do, and then forget about it, which kind of taps into what Emily was saying about accountability. And yeah, education as well, definitely.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all and hearing your views and discussing ways in which you can kind of think about the future and think about practical ways that we can kind of make these micro changes even within ourselves and within our companies, but actually kind of supporting the bigger ideas moving forward. So thank you very much. For the audience, we hope you found it inspiring and it has given you impetus to continue creating spaces for healthy discussion, different perceptions, and also seeking and moving around positive bias to action in your own work environments. So thank you. And I hope that we'll see more good work from you guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.